Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is February 2nd, YC128, and we have no Galente election news, so let's talk about everything else. This is the Eve Universe Show! Welcome, 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 guys. Settle on in, like the stream. How's it going? We do have quite a bit to talk about today. Well, two big things to talk about today. We have, well, three, but, well, one, whatever. We have we have this, of course, Frontier Friday. They put out a roadmap video. We talked about this, or at least it came out while we were streaming on Friday, but the video wasn't available yet. So today we are going to watch through this video. However, we do have a couple of hey, what's up, Ragtag? We do have a couple of other things to go into first. The first being that there was a new exploit notification put out today. Exploit notification using dead space to create inaccessible sensorial fields, filaments, traces, and deployables is now considered an exploit. It says Capsuleers effective immediately is considered an exploit to extend or otherwise utilize dead space pockets to make sensorial fields, abyssal traces, filaments, or any variety of deployable functionality inaccessible. Simply, intentionally using a sino, filament, or any structure in a manner that prevents other capsuleers from warping to it is against intended gameplay. The use of any such placement method is considered an exploit and falls under our standard policies outlined in the EVE Online Terms of Services. If you suspect that you've encountered this exploit or witness outlaw capsuleers abusing it, please get in touch with our customer support by sending a ticket to the Rules and Policies Exploits category. All information will aid our ongoing investigation. What is going on here? So, EVE has a concept called dead space pockets. We actually just went over the lore of dead space pockets not too long ago. But the reality of it is that dead space pockets are effectively set aside places in EVE Online for the purposes of some sort of site or event or, you know, whatever. Now, this is the kind of thing that I'm going to use a lot of terminology that might trigger some people because these are more like game dev terminologies. But like behind the scenes, we can call a dead space pocket a room, and the acceleration gates that lead to them a door, and the entirety of dead space pocket chain of any given site the dungeon. Okay, these are obviously not traditional EVE terms, but these are like game development terms, and therefore it is what how CCP describes these things, like when they're talking about it from a design development point of view. But the point of the matter is that dead space pockets, first of all, almost exclusively involve acceleration gates. I don't think they actually do, like, no, they don't always require an acceleration gate. But the idea behind a dead space pocket is that navigation within a dead space pocket is, like, warp navigation is impossible, right? So if you're somewhere within a dead space pocket, and you try to warp somewhere else within the same dead space pocket, it doesn't allow you to, right? So if you like go into a plex in faction warfare and there's a guy 150 kilometers away, you can't warp to him even if you tried to, because you're in the same dead space pocket as him. Likewise, even if you're in two different pockets, like if you're in a mission, for example, and somebody's in pocket 2 and somebody else is in pocket 1, they cannot warp back and forth to each other because they're both considered in the same dead space pocket. Likewise, any warps to something within a dead space pocket is always in reference to the beacon of that dead space pocket, right? So if there's somebody 2-3 rooms into a dungeon and you scan them down, you're not, even if you use combat probes, even if you get a precise location of exactly where that person is, and you warp to them, you will warp to the beacon. If you warp to them at 100, you will land 100 kilometers off the beacon, so on and so forth, right? So dead space pockets are very weird when it comes to how warping works. So putting these things together, let's say there's a faction warfare plex, right? This is actually one of the reasons why dead faction warfare plexes are one of the safest places in the game, because if you go inside of a dead space pocket and you burn off a few hundred kilometers, basically nobody can just land on you at that point. They have to, even if they probe you down, they would still have to land on the entry gate and then use that gate to come in, and then they would be on the landing point of that gate, and so several hundred kilometers off of you. There's no way to get closer than that automatically, and then of course they would have to burn to you. So this is why I mean, even I've used like if I'm doing faction warfare and I want to take a break, I'll just burn off a couple 100 kilometers, hit orbit or whatever, and then call it a day, and go on my little break or whatever. Now, what this is the key here about dead space, though, is that dead space does not allow sinusoidal fields, right? Sinusoidal fields, basically capital ships, very large ships, and some smaller ships like the Black Ops can jump between systems without using stargates. But in order to do so, they must have an exit point, which is done through a sinusoidal field. So a different ship or a deployable must activate a sinusoidal field, and then somebody else within the same fleet can activate, it can like lock onto that sinusoidal field and use it to jump or bridge or whatever that ship is capable of doing. So the idea is that within dead space pockets, you cannot light sinos. So example, the large plex, or the open plex rather, in faction warfare, there is no gate, but it is dead space. So if you go into that pocket, or if you warp to that site and then try to light a sino, it'll tell you that you can't, okay? So this is kind of the established norm of things. However, grids get really weird when things burn off for a very long time. As Neo points out, if someone is in a dead space pocket and they burn off like 10,000 kilometers from the beacon, they can actually exit dead space. But I guess according to this exploit, there is a way to kind of find a weird middle ground where the site is considered dead space. Therefore, nobody can probe you down or anything like that. However, it is not considered dead space for the purposes of sinoing or filamenting or anything like that, right? And that is clearly not the way it's intended to be. And so this is just, I wasn't even aware that this was possible. I'm sure some people were, and now it's an exploit. First of all, when they declare something like an exploit, this kind of thing like an exploit, you see this happen a lot when it comes to things like this, edge cases, very niche things. And the reason why is because like CCP could fix this, right? Theoretically, we're not even 100% sure, right? Whatever's happening, you could argue that this is a bug. There's a way to activate sinusoidal fields and abyssal traces and such while inside of a dead space pocket when you're not supposed to be able to. So it's a bug. You could theoretically throw in the development effort to fix the bug, but ultimately that effort doesn't actually do much. You know, if it's important enough, they will obviously fix the exploit. But a really good first thing to do is to just declare it an exploit, right? Why go through the possibly, dozens of hours of development time fixing a bug that affects a very niche group of people when you could just declare it an exploit and call it a day, right? So that's good. There is one piece to this, though, that I find very concerning, which is that it says, or any variety of deployable functionality inaccessible. Now, obviously, this means that things that you normally cannot deploy, right? But, like, the way it's phrased, I'm not saying that CCP messed up so much here, but, like, think about it this way. There are deployables that are totally valid within a dead space pocket, namely mobile tractor units and mobile depots. So the only concern that I have in here, like obviously this is an exploit. It's good for them to declare it an exploit, but I can't wait for the idiots who try to accuse people of exploiting because they deploy anything like a mobile tractor unit or a mobile depot. But it does say deployable functionality inaccessible. I really wish it was a little bit clearer about it, but it is. So basically the idea is that if you're not allowed to do it in a normal dead space pocket, you can't manipulate the dead space pocket in order to make it so that you can do it. That's it. That's simple. Any thoughts about this or anything like that? Do you know anything more that I didn't know about this? Like I said, I didn't actually even know. Sometimes I hear about an exploit before it gets declared. There's some whispers about it. I haven't actually seen anything about this. So let me know if you guys know anything else about this. But other than that, just remember, don't use sinos, filaments, or any structure structure, don't be deploying your Athenors in a fucking Dead Space pocket, I guess, to prevent it from warping is against intended gameplay design. So if you light a Cyno or a filament or deploy a structure, it must be directly warpable. If you try to do something that makes it so that it's not directly warpable, like using a Dead Space pocket, that's bad. Don't do it. Easy peasy. Okay. What else is up? Relative warp to negate warp disruption bubbles. Next exploit to be fixed. Yeah. Well, I would argue, honestly, Stealth Suit, that one can't... Why is there a giant hole in my shirt? I think my dog must have got me earlier. Whatever. I'm sorry, guys. I wonder what they'll do if there's already structures anchored in those situations. You could theoretically move them, so that way they're not in the Dead Space pocket. I don't know of any structures that are in that situation. But to go to the Stealth Suits thing, relative warp to negate warp disruption bubbles, I don't think that is actually a bad one to declare as an exploit, because of two things. One, it's very easy to do that accidentally, right? Anytime you're using relative warp, if you're using a nullsec, you could, in theory, catch somebody in the warp that should not warp, but then the game will let them. And then the other piece to that is, like, who do you punish for that? Do you punish the person who initiated the warp, or do you punish the person who successfully warped out of the bubble that they weren't supposed to? Unfortunately, that's the kind of situation that CCP actually does need to put in, like, a technical fix for, rather than just tell people to not do it. Usually it's best, when it comes to exploits, it's best to be things that are niche, edge case, and players have to kind of force it to be in existence. A really good example of this was this going wrong is when they put out the exploit that any undue delay of Concord is considered an exploit, right? When they were talking about boomeranging, which is basically you trigger Concord and then you can warp around, or at least you were able to do this. And that causes Concord to kind of keep chasing you, and you stay ahead of them. And so you can keep them pretty well distracted for longer than the normal 20, anywhere from 10 to 25 seconds, depending on which band of space you were in. That was considered an exploit. But the problem with that was then we had this issue where people would undock from a station with a criminal tag, which causes Concord to warp to them. And then right as they're doing that, somebody initiates a gank. So now Concord is warping to this other location, have to land there, deal with that guy, and then warp back. And that does create a delay in Concord's response. So what do we do about that? Well, this actually happened a few years ago where there were a few people that got banned for that action by a GM. But ultimately, that action had to get reversed, because that, like, it was niche enough and weird enough that it wasn't considered to be, like, that's the point. It was that they got into a thing where it was, like, very, like, how do we even enforce this? Because here's the problem, okay? You can trick somebody, or you can just know some other method. Somebody might undock with a criminal tag and trigger that to happen, and then somebody can capitalize on that, and then that person who undocked is being punished for just undocking, right? And, yes, that is a very weird niche thing to do, but it's hard for CCP to prove that that was done intentionally, and therefore it might accidentally catch people that are just doing normal play. And so ultimately those bans got reversed. So some of these exploits are very difficult. Like, that kind of exploit isn't great. This kind of exploit is fine, because the hoops that you have to jump through in order to make this happen is pretty big, right? So if somebody's done this, then they're clearly intentionally breaking the rules, which makes it a good exploit. Like a good thing to declare an exploit. With the warp bubble thing, I feel like that's definitely one of those things that they're just going to have to fix, because players can accidentally trigger it without intending to be an exploit. So there you go. That's my thoughts about that. But I'm interested in what you guys have to think in the comments below. Next, we have some stuff about Vanguard. All exploits are good? Yes. No. No. Okay, so we covered this. We looked at this a few days ago, a week ago, whatever. It was on the 15th. We saw this from Lord Warden Elange, so Warden, obviously the Warden is the structure in the in Zarzak. Besides the Fulcrum, it's the one that they use for hacking. It's the one that they use for like hyperspace telemetry calculations, etc. And so this says, war clones, we have returned, betrayed by the empires, hunted by Concord, purged from the cluster. Too dangerous and unpredictable to be permitted freedom. For years we hid in the shadows of New Eden. At last we have the strength to rise again. Avalon is finally real, our home amongst the stars, our bastions. Our actions will now shape destiny. The empires will come for us again. Our fight will be eternal, but we will drag them down into the mud and dirt, and we will make them bleed. We are the immortal vanguard, the Garden Watches. And this is one of those things that's like, all exploits are bad game design. Well, you could argue that like a lot of exploits come from bugs. I wouldn't necessarily call them bad game design, because the fact that there are things outside of the bound of your design is not necessarily inherently bad to game design, but it's just the reality of the intended design versus what players do with things, which is always like, that's the eternal struggle. Anyway. So this is the one that we read the other day. There's a couple of really interesting things in here. Obviously, the bastions are the thing that we're paying attention to when it comes to the development of the Vanguard, and Avalon being the project that they were working on during the last Vanguard event. Elange is a new character, and this idea of the garden is what really caught our eye, and we were talking about it a little bit. Well, in the Vanguard Discord, the official Vanguard account has posted this text, which is not showing all the way, so hold on. Resonant Brief 1, Construction of the Resonant Garden Assessment Note. The following summary is compiled from early engineering logs, choir technical papers, and restricted architectural schematics. Confidence level moderate high. Summary: the Resonant Garden was established during Avalon's initial construction phase. Its physical location, full topology, and underlying architecture remain undisclosed outside of the Lord Resonant Meladrin's highest ranking ascendants. Current Sorrow assessment concludes that Garden is not housed within Avalon proper. Available indicators point towards the distributed architecture with components embedded across multiple resonance capable systems, some of which operate beyond the standard Bastion infrastructure. The Garden is internally described as a memory archive, but this classification is incomplete. Choir literature indicate it captures and retains the cognitive residue of every war clone housed within Avalon. This occurs passively at all times and intensifies during deployment cycles. Deployment interface. During a Vanguard deployment, each construct maintains a direct tether to the Resonance Garden. This tether serves two primary functions. Resonant uplink. As the war clone operates graphed output streams to the Garden, adding new psychometric, kinetic, and operational data to the existing resonance strata within the Garden. Behavioral synchronization. The Garden mirrors infomorph construct state in real time, ensuring continuity and of identity and memory. Hold on. Nope. There we go. Sorry. All right. The garden mirrors infomorph construct state in real time, ensuring continuity of identity and memory. This process ensures that every deployment adds measurable data to the garden's internal geometries. Current assessment: the Resonance Garden functions as more than an archive. It distributes its distributed design and continuous intake of deployment resonance suggests it was built with an active interpretive capability from the outset. The intent behind this design remains undetermined. Wait, did I get something wrong? I do have dyslexia. What did I get wrong? All right, so what is going on here? First of all, it appears that this note is from Concord, right? This reads as a Concord kind of assessment a little bit. It's kind of structured a little bit like previous Concord writings. And, you know, they do refer to sorrow assessment within it. I feel like this is just like Concord's writing about the Resonance Garden. So what is this? Well, Avalon is the bastion, right? Shoot, I wish... Do we have... Is this what I wanted? No. There was another one where that was about Avalon being created. So the last Vanguard deployment that was going on was about the Vanguard establishing the bastion, Avalon. And so the question is, like, what is the garden? So now, having read that, let's read this again. Avalon is finally real. Our home amongst the stars, our bastions. Is there any other? No. So the garden watches. Basically, man, maybe I should really sit down and read Soldran's Garden. Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. There's the whole thing about Soldran and the garden. Oh no, I forgot all about that. There is a book. There is a book called Soldran's Garden. And like this is a modern writing, but that's not Jesus, this is 2016. But that's oddly enough okay, cuz like we have the Rogue Drone logs that have records from that Ukrainian play from like the early 20th century, I think it was. Basically the first play to have like the idea of a robot. That was what they were quoting. So it's not like this is obviously in the distant future. So the fact that they're even in contemporary literature may not necessarily be bad. It's just so weird because like Soldran is one of the main operatives of the Deathless. And the fact that there is this reference, or there is a thing called Soldran's Garden, is so weird. If anyone has read this book and know if it means anything at all that we can like dig into, please, please, please let me know, because that is such a weird like correlation. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that and it's related to Arthurian legends too, right? And Avalon and all sorts of stuff like that. So there probably is a there. There could just be, this could be like a multiple, like a convergence of information. Like they're both this book and whatever Eve is working off of. They're both basing it off of the same like Arthurian legendary doodads. It might be a red herring, but it's just very strange. So what is the garden? So if you think about it, there are kind of three different pieces of a Vanguard deployment, right? You have the clone banks, which is where the clones are grown and utilized. You have the virtuality, which is where the actual like infomorphs are stored. And then you have the warden, which is like the connective tissue that helps make it so that the infomorphs can project themselves into the bodies to control them, right? So in this case, like, the Avalon seems to be their I think that is the virtuality, probably. They do worry. There is a whole thing about how the garden is not physically located with Avalon. Avalon was built. Avalon is a physical place. It's hidden somewhere in the universe. Its physical location, full topology, and underlying architecture remains undisclosed. So, like, the garden... Oh, no. The Resonant Garden is the physical place. I think Avalon is also... Yeah, because Avalon proper is also a physical place, because the garden is not housed within the Avalon proper. So the garden, being a physical location, could have been inside of the Avalon, which would make Avalon also a physical location, but they're not. They're in two different spots. I wonder if the garden itself is hidden in hyperspace. Maybe. The question is the garden where the infomorphs are kept? And it seems like that's not true, because so during a Vanguard deployment, each construct maintains a direct tether to the Resonance Garden. This tether serves two primary functions. As the Warclone operates, graphed output streams to the garden, adding new psychometric, kinetic, and operational data to the existing resonance strata within the garden. The garden mirrors infomorph construct state in real time, ensuring continuity of identity and memory. So the garden functions as an infomorph backup, right? So it does sound like it's functioning a little bit like the Warden in that connective tissue between infomorphs that are stored one place and the physical bodies that they are, engaging with. The garden functions as like a backup shaft, or like shunt or whatever. But this also makes it so that the deployment adds measurable data to the garden's internal geometries, which is interesting too, because like the garden's internal geometries makes it sound like the garden itself is the virtuality. I think the garden is virtual based on the talk of... the garden... Yeah, so they have internal geometries that can have effects on via data. So the chances are the internal geometries of the garden is virtual. But it also, everything that has a virtual existence also has a physical existence, right? So this is talking about, like... It's kind of like in the fact that like the Warden and the Fulcrum are two separate structures, even though they're interacting with one another. Are these the old Jove structures like the Fulcrum? No, because they built Avalon during the last Vanguard thing. So they've recreated, it seems that they've recreated the tools of the Fulcrum and Warden external to them, a separate base of operations, the Bastion, right? That was the entire point of it. Which of course we know that like in the end, Bastions will have like a physical location in space and therefore will project outward from there. So like as far as the lore goes, I'm not 100% sure. As far as a game design goes, I have a strong suspicion that this is the justification for progress, right? Like as you do deployments, you level up, you power up your Bastion, you power up your Bastion's virtuality, you gain experience that might unlock extra things or whatever. Like this is the in-universe justification for a XP/leveling/development, like progression system to be built into Vanguard when it is released, right? As you deploy, you not only gain credits and get stuff, but everything you do, killing people, mining stuff, jumping over a box, whatever, all of that stuff becomes data, which is telemetry, or like is useful and the garden is the part of it that like lets you grow, right? The garden is where it grows. And that's what it feels like to me. The other thing that's worth noting that I'll talk about is that, especially when I was reading some of this stuff, my question is, I feel like the Vanguard are being a little bit more independent, right? This feels like an excuse for the Vanguard to almost break free of the Deathless as well and become even more independent because they're not 100% reliant on the Fulcrum or on anything like that. So, yeah, it's going to be worth keeping an eye on. The idea, I thought at first, my first initial gut response to this was, of course, the garden is where the clones are grown, right? Like that would make sense. A garden, you grow things, that's fine. But the fact that it's called the Resonant Garden, this is about, again, I think that this is very much about like the development of your characters. You know, this is why, you know, so you establish a bastion and you gain experience, or you develop that bastion's kind of level or your character's level via this process. This is just the in-universe explanation for it. But again, we'll have to see. Let me know if I've missed anything or anything like that in the comments below or in chat or whatever. But that is all I've got for Vanguard today, I think. Yeah. Okay. Now then. Anything else? Comments, concerns before we jump into the Frontier thing? I think we're probably good. All right, so we're going to put EVE Online and EVE Vanguard kind of on the shelf for a moment, and we're going to watch the EVE Frontier roadmap. This thing, hold on, let me fix this real quick. So this came out last Friday, just so in case you just crawled out from under a rock or you found my stream last week. EVE Frontiers is the kind of EVE 2 that CCP is working on. It is designed to be backed by basically it's designed to be a more open source, open kind of universe than EVE Online. So the key to this is that it's built on the blockchain, which makes a whole, like the backing data and how the universe works kind of be public information. Eventually, CCP has often said that they want to make it, you know, all the way to the point where CCP is not even a necessary component to this. So while EVE Online is very much about this sci-fi universe where we as Immortal Capsuleers kind of shape the future of this cluster that is already well established, right? There's empires, there's, you know, law and order and governmental organizations and that manage things, etc., etc. Frontiers have none of that. It's basically this chaotic world where everything gets destroyed every once in a while, and so now people are just being woken up again. It's much more about space colonization than anything else. We've done several playtests of it, and you know, it's still in development, but we wanted to look at the roadmap for 2026. I do have it on 1.5 speed just to make it easier to get through. Let's jump into it. Let me make sure my desktop audio is on. It is now, and let's go.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Frontier Friday. I am, of course, your host, your best friend, your confidant, your Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. That's right, we're dodging bullets over here. I am, of course, CCP Jotun, joined today by not just this man to my left, but also these other men. Wrong button push. Yes, that's right, everybody. It is Frontier Friday. We are back in the saddle.
Okay, so CCP Jotun is actually, oh God, I'm not going to remember anybody's real name or in EVE name, but he was a wormholer in EVE that got onto the CSM and then actually got hired by CCP while he was on the CSM, but he went over to the EVE Frontier side of things. And then over here we have another guy who I absolutely should remember the name of, but he was like a really big guy in the EVE tournament scene, doing commentary for all kinds of EVE tournaments, especially the big alliance tournaments and stuff. Mark Resurrectus is, yes, Mark Resurrectus on the right, and Cool. It's right there. Hopefully they'll
I am
say it.
CCP Jotun. This is CCP Goodfellow. You know him. This is CCP Overlord over here with the hair. And over here to my left, this gentleman is CCP Bowman, our new, not new at this point, but newish.
New to the Frontier Cinematic Universe.
True, new to the Frontier Cinematic Universe.
Exactly.
The CCP Bowman, our development director. That's right, right?
Is this too
That's
fast
right.
for anyone?
You're in charge of making sure that all the many things that need to happen.
It's the how of making games.
Exactly. You'll love to see that because, my God, I'm glad that I am not in charge of that position. This would,
Yes, put me on a leash.
Okay.
Yeah, no, ankle bracelet here below me.
Yeah. I mean, you opened with your analogy of Franz Ferdinand, but I mean, famously didn't really dodge much bullets. That's kind of the problem.
Dodgebolts once, I think, caught the
Let's
other
try
one. He was a master of
1.25.
his craft. Unappreciated.
50-50.
There's Tom
Oh, it's
talking
good
about
speedo.
NPC
All right,
Jotun and
fair enough.
Jotun.
Yeah, that does track up. Yeah.
I'm glad Chad has already appreciated the fact that we will at some point need a new table because we are running out of desk space very fast. Listen, hey, it's all part of the. We'll figure it out. Anyway, friends. Before we get too deep into the App Fest early, we've already promised. By that I mean me. I promised we would not be doing this, but we are doing it already. This is not our first big stream back since we came back from holiday, but this is a big one because this is the day that we're going to reveal or start to flesh out some of our 2026 roadmap. Now, just to give a little bit of context to this for people who are watching at home or people watching later, if you're watching on the YouTube or one.
I honestly think it's just a marketing stunt they do to get funds from Pearl Abyss. Wrong thing that they're getting funds from. So, as I've said many times before, basically what was happening was there was a whole bunch of investor money kicking around a couple years ago looking for the perfect kind of game or world that would allow them to make blockchain show how valuable blockchain is, right? They were talking about a bunch of crypto bros, A20Z, I think it was, or A12Z, something like that. Like, it represented a few people. They had like $50 million, and they needed a game that showed that blockchain could be valuable to people. Obviously Ubisoft, I think, was the one that famously created a card game that used blockchain stuff, and that ended up being a complete flop. And so, these crypto guys who make money on crypto being considered a valid, good technology, had just a goat ton of money, and Hilmar managed to convince them that that his universe, the Eve setting and the Eve kind of world, was the correct place for that technology. So almost the entirety of the funding for Frontiers came from crypto investment. That's why they've hired mostly new people for it. That's why it's a completely separate effort. That said, what is nice about it, even if you don't appreciate the crypto side of things or anything like that, even if that is nervous about you, there's so much work, like them being allowed to experiment with EVE Online as a universe in ways that are just completely incapable of doing in a established universe on a 20-year-old code base. They've been able to work on things like switching it to, I think it was the DirectX changeover, or is this? Yeah, I think that was part of this. A whole bunch of it's kind of a dream wish list for CCP. They're able to create a universe with better physics engine, with a lot of the things that they've always wanted for EVE Online. But EVE Online, yeah, Python 3, that's what it was, et cetera, et cetera. So crypto pay to win, even better. I mean, look, I'm not telling you that it's necessarily a great. I'm not telling you that this is a good or bad game at the moment. This is just what they're working on, and it's important to pay attention to it, not only because of what it might become, but also, again, like a lot of these things are an alternative look at the way what EVE Online could be. And in fact, the reason why we're paying attention to this one in particular is because they're going to be showing off alternative ways of doing things like directional scanner, because that is one of the biggest things that like Frontiers has been wrestling with, which is like, how do I make an EVE Online that doesn't rely on the overview? We love EVE Online, we love its spaceships and all that stuff, but the overview in particular, we do have the reputation of it being, spreadsheets in space. So like, what does it look like to have an EVE Online without an overview and without normal directional scans, which are very interesting questions for an EVE Online player, even if these do or don't ever come to EVE Online. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love to pay attention to EVE Frontiers more than anything. But it is also true that this game has been pretty popular amongst those who have been getting into it. It's a different player base because it's a slightly different kind of mode of thinking. There is no safe spaces. There's no, whatever. It's very much a space colonization universe. But either way, we're jumping into it. Blockchain things. Yes. Yeah. The blockchain stuff was popular at the time, and then it kind of, well, I wouldn't even say necessarily that the blockchain thing necessarily popped. It was having trouble. NFTs definitely fell apart, but like the idea of blockchain continues to be pretty strong, but now it all transfers over to AI. And the important thing to that, though, is okay, hold on. The reason why that's important is because you got to remember that the very thing that makes, what did crypto do? Crypto made everybody suddenly need GPUs in order to mine crypto or to do the crypto processing. And then right as that was falling apart, they figured out a new use for a bunch of GPUs, which was AI development. So yeah, there has been like a bit of a moving on that the universe, our world has done, but that doesn't necessarily make them wrong. Here's the thing about that. They're absolutely correct in the idea that if you could pull this off, where there's a public ledger for all of the data in the game, and all the universe's rules are effectively codified within that public ledger, you could theoretically make an entirely open source game where there is no actual need for like robust servers running with their own databases, because that stuff is on you're leveraging the public ledgers. But that said, like that is also an insane pie in the sky kind of idea, and CCP's even like, this is one of the things that they're trying to deal with, is how to make Frontiers responsive enough, how to make all of this kind of work. They're still in a halfway baked kind of concept, but this is also like this is early days yet, so we'll have to see. EVE Frontiers Discord does have more members than the EVE Online Discord. Yeah, I think that we are making a critical mistake if we try to ignore Frontiers completely. Frontiers is a cool game, but all this blockchain nonsense does not make it palatable to people. What's nice about it is that when you play Frontiers, you have almost no exposure to the blockchain-ness of it. It's just the way that they supposedly going to be the way that they maintain the database. One of the only real applications of this right now is like when you put down one of the major structures, that does register with their like stand-in blockchain that they're using right now. So theoretically, like for instance, there are tools where you can go and look at the map and see every single jump bridge in existence, because all of that stuff is registered on the blockchain. This reminds me of, actually, I can't remember who it was, but a CCP developer a while back when all of this blockchain stuff was going around, and like the idea that EVE Online, what is it? NFT stands for not for tranquility, right? That was what they said when they were like, okay, we're not going to do NFT stuff or crypto stuff with EVE Online, right? Well, I had a developer come into my chat during that time, and he pointed out like the idea of like NFTs as they were back then. Like there was one where they took like kill mails, famous kill mails from that year's Alliance tournament, and they turned them into NFTs for people. But that was just kind of like a play around thing. But what he was talking about is like, if anything, what would be cool with blockchain is things like databases, because one of the big problems that CCP has, or really any of these kinds of things, is the API, right? The API, you have a database with all the information, you have all of the normal interactions and transactions to make the server going, but then you have the API, which allows people to just ping it for information, right? And that's a totally separate path, and so that also has to be maintained and rate loaded, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if the data of EVE, like if all of the universe data of EVE were on the blockchain, then CCP wouldn't actually need to maintain an active API system, because that data would be accessible, as we have seen in some things with EVE Frontiers. Now, that isn't always great. It's really hard to hide things in EVE Frontiers when everything's registered on public ledger, but that's not here nor there. Let's jump into what they're having to talk about today.
One of, I'm sure, mini shorts will get cut up for this, and we'll throw out into the universe.
The crypto becomes front and center once you start needing fuel. Well, I mean, not yet, technically. You're right. There is the whole thing with fuel. Look, we've talked about EVE Frontiers quite a bit. Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to discuss, but I want to talk about what they're trying to talk about now.
This is not going to be super detailed. You're not going to see every little bit and piece that you're going to see over the next couple of months, but you will see some high level stuff. You're going to see some stuff you've never seen before. You're going to see some stuff that I only saw just a couple minutes ago, which is crazy. I mean, what are you going to do? So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Hyped?
Very hyped.
Yep.
We've spent a lot of time working on this one to try and get everything together, and then we're going to present it to you here and now. We've got a limited amount of time because we are going to do the live the feed after the show with the CSM for EVE Online. They're going to be on with the community team doing some cool stuff. So we have a hard cutoff around 2 o'clock. We are going to have a blog post out next week that's going to have this information plus a little bit more detail in it as well. So if you miss anything here or we miss anything here, you'll be able to catch it there anyway. So
We haven't gotten that
let's
yet.
go ahead and proceed.
And I think also, sorry.
Yo, please, go ahead.
Just like with what we've been doing so far, we had a kickoff with the entire Frontier team 2 weeks ago, actually like precisely 2 weeks ago, where we went over all of this, as has been.
Blockchain is fine. It's all the tokens that you can purchase with real money. The game is supposed to be built on the Sui blockchain, but that's just the tech. Is it reliant on its validation? Yeah, well, again, so like a lot of those details are still kind of up in the air. There is the idea of like Eve coin, that is supposed to be like their actual cryptocurrency that's designed to do things like buy the crystals for fuel, that allows this to kind of have it makes it so that the work in the game actually has like tangible meaning, because everything takes fuel, and fuel requires mining, and that mining requires crystals, and those crystals take money in the form of crypto in order to get. So that kind of ties every action to the game with a small quanta of value. This is part of what they're kind of working on. Eve coin and rug pull in the, well, I mean, it's only rug pull if they shut down the servers, but like part of the whole point here is that like arguably the data will still be visible. I don't know, man. It's, again, a lot of that stuff is still pipe dreamy. So we'll have to see.
Been tradition with sharing everything that our plans are, what we want to achieve. Some of it will be overachieved.
One of the big thing about Eve coin as a token is that it is fungible. Like they aren't trying to say it's a non-fungible token. So like calling it a rug pull is a little bit meh, because yeah, I don't know. The whole point is like, and this goes back to even like the early days of NFT. Well, there's token. So like the token, I think like when you register stuff, those create tokens as well. There's a whole tokenizer. Like when I got into doing stuff like building the Stargates and stuff, that's when it starts getting into like managing tokens and gas and all that sort of stuff. It does go into that kind of stuff a little bit. When you start trying to like anchor or work with infrastructure. I haven't gotten that too deep into it, so I'm not going to try to pretend to speak intelligently about it. But yeah, just, yeah. The whole thing about NFTs from the very beginning and crypto and from the very beginning is the idea of like an NFT is cool, but it has to be like, it has to do something, right? The fact that you just have a monkey thing is kind of whatever. The fact that this token can be used to buy valuable things within the game at least gives it a purpose. But yeah, either way, we're going to jump into this. We've talked plenty in the past about like the pros and cons about what Frontier's trying to do when we covered the white paper and stuff.
Some new things will emerge that we hadn't planned, but will be cool, and then we'll miss also other things because we wanted to add stuff where it was a bit more complicated than we wanted, etc.
Sure.
But literally what we're showing now is the work that we were showing to the team, what the plan is ahead for the upcoming beats.
That's what the entire company sees.
Yeah.
You're seeing behind the curtain.
Sure.
That's literally what we're doing.
I was going to say, and this is, I mean,
I think the same thing happened with Dust. They made it for the PS3 while Sony was about to release the PS4. I mean, definitely, like, the difference there is that, like, without changing the code, they were no longer able, like, it wouldn't run on the PS4. That's, like, the argument there would be, like, as if maybe the Coinbase that they're going to use announces that they're shutting down right as they're developing it. That would be the equivalent.
this is unironically, there are things in here that
Some of them are the same slides.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are pulled directly from that kickoff meeting, and there's stuff in here that again people inside the company haven't even seen. And this is like hot off the press stuff in a lot of cases, and not all of it is going to come to fruition the way that it's being presented. But I hope that people will be able to see this and see like at least where we're going.
Yeah.
We want them to know our goals.
Yeah.
So to quote CCP Goodfella, the hardest part is going from 0 to 1.
That's true.
And a lot of the features that you're going to see here, you're like, hey, we've got some of that just now. You'll see it a little bit later. But I'm going to use character progression as an example. You saw the first iteration of our character progression coming in just in December there, and that 0 to 1 is an important part, and then we're working on refining it. So some of the features you're seeing coming up are going from 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2. Some of them are going from 0 to 1.
Okay.
And we'll kind of try and talk about that as we go through it. Some of these features are going to be coming out imminently in March. Some of them are going to be later in the year in September. Again, we'll try and give you some context as we roll.
Cool. All right. Well, with no more beating around it, let's go ahead and get into our presentation. Here we go.
All right.
So this is the 2026 Frontier roadmap. CCP Overloaded, take it away.
Yeah, so just as a quick reminder of where we are. So eFrontier, we've always said we have 3 main product pillars. Grounded in science. Everything should feel like it makes sense because it kind of just makes sense. If you're playing an FPS and you hit the jump button, you expect to go up and you expect to come back down. You don't question this fact. It's just...
I'm going to slow down a little bit now that they're getting into like actual meaty stuff, so that way we can all hear it clearly.
The nature of gravity, you just anticipated. We should feel like the game is like that. It makes sense if you run into something, you should bounce off it or take damage. It makes sense that you can expend energy to do stuff. So we're grounded in science. It's also a cruel survival experience. It's not supposed to be an easy game. It's supposed to be hard, but it's supposed to feel like you can beat the world. The world itself is trying to crush your very dreams, and when you succeed, even just for a little bit, you feel elated for that fact.
As I say to my 6-year-old son, growth through suffering.
Exactly, growth through
So
suffering.
if your son.
Got to start them tough. And then finally, rebuilding a broken world. We're not trying to impose our version of what a utopian society in the frontier looks like. We're basically trying to give you the tools to build it yourself. However you want to do it with your group, that's what we're trying to do. So you're rebuilding this broken world in your own visions.
And building with the community, building with the builders that are adding stuff to the world. It's a meta pillar.
Yeah.
Yep. This is what we call the golden path. So this is a very high level sort of view of the game loop. And I was about to start using the laser pointer and pointing at the screen, but I don't think that'll be very useful
Just do this.
for you guys. But essentially, you can think of the golden path as the progression from I have just awoken in this hostile universe to I am part of a functioning society, contributing and growing. And it starts off very much like sort of bushcraft, like literally like scrambling in the dirt, looking for seeds to be able to build and survive. And then as you get the base fundamental survival done, you start to then like build ways to move around the area with a ship and then go further afield from where you started, from that initial like waking up on the beach with the rock in your underwear. You know, you're really starting to progress into the universe. And then you start to identify yourself as the player, as the character, and build on that, make yourself more powerful, more skillful, find other people that like doing the same things you do, and then build together into start as a village, into a town, into a city, into a civilization. So that's the golden path.
I'm gonna push back a little bit here and say like this isn't. I feel like this is not the correct usage of game loop. When you talk about game loop, you're talking about like the sequence of events that a player has to do over and over and over again within the game. So like the game loop here would be locate which rocks you want to go to, warp to the rocks, mine the rocks, bring it back, put it in the refiner, refine it, build a thing. Like that would be the game loop. So like I don't know about this, but like I get kind of where they're going with this. So what they're saying is that at the very beginning you wake up and then you're in a survival mode, like you know, whatever. Which is very true. Like a lot of games, this actually reminds me of like No Man's Sky is actually a good one, because if you've ever thought about the fact that why No Man's Sky always starts you out on a poisonous planet, it's because like at the very beginning of the game, you want to give them some sort of like impetus to rush and move forward. It's why when you play Subnautica, right, you start out with the whole base on fire and you have to like put it all out, right? So then after that, there's seek shelter. So there's like, what do I do? I'm under immediate danger. I got to solve that. And then it's like, okay, well, now I begin to establish myself. So you build your first little base, and then you build your first little ship, and then seek freedom, escape, which is that idea of like, okay, well, I've been constrained to this one solar system and its resources that are available to me. So now how do I like increase that band by like traveling to other solar systems, for example? And then seek answers. I can only assume that has to do with like, okay, well, what do I do next? How do I build the next biggest thing? What's actually going on? And then seek self, seek others. So this is like, who am I in this world, and who else am I going to be part of? This goes back to kind of what I was saying last week with my tips for newer pilots, where it's like, don't let other people tell you what you want to do, what you should do in Eve. Find out what you want to do, seek self, and then find people that will enable you or direct you to do that as best as you can, which would be the tribe. And then from there, you have kind of the higher order things where seek wonders. So that's when you start to like go after the harder stuff, the landmarks, to try to like pull apart what's going on. Seek power, better industrial capabilities, better weapons of war, etc. And then seek meaning. What are we doing here? What is this whole thing about? What is our long-term purpose within this game structure?
And of course, in each of these sections is almost a game in itself. and it should be a continuous process, not just one little simple thing. So this is a very high-level overview.
Yeah, and there's a phenomenal talk by CCP Maximum Cats that goes into details on this overall.
We're going to have to bring him back on here before too
Yeah.
long to,
Yeah,
to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maximum Cats, you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah, I think I remember
So
that.
here's the timeline.
Right. So this is, I wanted to preempt this because people are going to look at this and be like, wait a second, there's a lot of 2025 on there.
Yep.
That is true. But 2025 was very, very busy, at least at this, throughout the middle of the year.
This is the slide from the last time we did this.
Right.
So this is to show kind of what we said, where we were, what we're doing, and kind of where we're up to now. So if there was a big UR here, then can you move us to the other side?
Oh, I can move us to the other side. Yeah. We can,
I think we're here now,
That's true. We're
roughly.
over,
Maybe over here a little bit.
over there. Yeah,
Yeah,
just right over that way. See it?
But we're making our way through.
We're
So
taking stock of what we were saying and where we're heading.
yeah, it's important to look at what's been delivered and frame it
It
based
should
on
be in
what's
the
been said
top
before, so we
left.
can gauge how accurate we are at talking about these things.
Mhm.
So looking at what we said was coming in Cycle 3, we had creative based building, so be able to put your
So remember, they're currently in cycle 4.
stuff kind of wherever you want it to be. Endless
Right.
industry, the fact that you can sort of put stuff in and it'll just continue to build rather than having to say, hey, I want 10, 21, etc. The control after death in the first iterations of the death loop, where you're going to reawaken in the universe. We had new ships, we had the first
Are we in
iterations of
3
our
or
new
4?
control schemes, and we had sort of events to incentivize exploration, finding stuff throughout the universe.
Yeah, we're in
This was
4.
the October
Yeah.
cycle that
Yep.
we went in October.
Then in Cycle 4, we had planned to have updated ship controls. So then we had the full WASD system coming in at this point. We had the first iteration of the character progression system, and then the creation of clones. We didn't quite deliver on tribal base building as we wanted to, but
And that is, by the way, for those of you who have wondered, this is why like we haven't. I've touched on Frontiers a few times, but I've said multiple times that like the fact that you cannot share bases right now is the biggest limiter for me and like my friends and our whole group to like dig into it beyond just a cursory like one day poke at it, because like how do you build a society if you can't like we want to create like a collective area, and that's just not possible in the game yet.
we'll come back to that. Yet is important. And we started to really flesh out distinct ship roles and the attributes and the fundamental way the ships work as individuals. And finally, of course, base progression. We added more stuff to allow you to make your base more like your home, away from home, in the great visions of space. So that's what we said before. So we can look at what's kind of coming up, and we split most of our features into these 5 areas. So core gameplay is basically everything that sort of is to do with things like the ships, the clones, sort of the main gameplay day-to-day loop and the pillars. These all feed into things like base building, the actual aspect of building it out, upgrading it, all the production capabilities and so on. The creation of the world itself, that's all the flavor that sits within it. That's the sites, landscapes, which we talked about before. Then it's identity, the actual, the core of the player, your shell that you are upgrading and sacrificing and continuing to work on as you form the identity of your player. And finally, just the overall creative pillar, so it all looks cohesive as part of the frontier. So that's where everything kind of falls into one of these areas. So let's start with core gameplay.
So this is, to be very clear, this is a lot of new stuff people are going to be seeing here very soon. A lot of these are features that are probably not feature complete, certainly, but are in a lot of cases either showcases of stuff that's being worked on right now, or prototypes of systems that will be going in before too long.
So our first one, this is on-grid scanning. So right now you can see everything on grid all the time unless it's secluded, and that doesn't really make sense. Why should you always have full access to every piece of information around you? Why should you know that this container has something in it? So bringing an active scanning capability into the game, where you kind of ping the environment around you and see what's there. This allows you to really feel like you're sort of in the environment itself, but also think of like a submarine sonar. Okay, so you're aware of what's around you with passive sensors, but as soon as you ping that sonar, not only do you get a lot of information what's around you, but you're also lighting up the area like a Christmas tree. Everyone knows where you are.
Right.
So this will feed into things like overall detection and signature and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So you can be quiet, you can go around and check things individually, or you could blast.
One of the big things that they talk about is the idea of the dark forest, right? That like Eve has a lot of like very good information detection, right? You've got local, you've got perfect D-scan, all that kind of stuff. So this whole idea of dark forest, where it's like you don't fully know what's out there, is a big component of Frontiers. And so the idea that like you don't actually get to know all of the doodads around you without also going loud and being visible to others, very cool. Very kind of, I guess I would argue, realistic.
Your sensors and see what's around you.
And it makes the game also way bigger. Imagine going to a location now, and you really need to be scanning down things and finding out. And there's gameplay involved with the scanner itself that isn't we don't capture in this video where you're like holding down and then the directionality is like narrowing.
Oh yeah,
just wait.
Just wait.
Wait 2 slides.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you bring this up, and just to touch on something real fast, I was gonna say, no, you're on the right track. To talk about something. So Bo and I were talking just before we started the stream too about the idea that every bit of information that you gather is an opportunity for somebody to gather information about you as well.
Yes.
And that's not just with obviously on-grid scanning, but system scanning, region scanning. Like anytime that you are.
Anytime you reach out for information, you're letting people know you exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
and the tug
That's
and pull of that
interesting.
warfare of information is a big part of the game.
That's actually really
I've
cool.
used the analogy a lot of imagine you're sort of in a dark forest and you hear stuff around you, and then you light your lantern. You're going to get a good view of what's around you, but also you're going to let people see you. Now the questions.
As a scout in the military, like this actually like instinctively, I love that, right? The idea that like, how do you collect information without exposing yourself? Very cool.
People saying, can you narrow your scan? Yes, and will the ping reveal you locally across the whole system? Both of these as well. It'll be much more obvious the closer you are. The further away you are, it might be harder to see in the noise.
It'll depend upon your ship's sensors as
Correct.
well.
This is an early sort of work in progress visualization of system level scanning. So now you're looking at like the landscapes that you can see, and you can start to narrow into the landscapes and get information about them. You don't know a huge amount of stuff in them because it's a very global, large scan, but it's like, hey, looking for the forests and the mountains and stuff in space.
Well, I think it's interesting about this is that we've actually showed people this slide or this animation before. But before there wasn't the context of what landscapes were going to be, right? So this just looks like, oh, they're just big sites in the universe.
Yep.
Those individual sections are themselves individual landscapes.
Yes.
That you are huge, obviously, because they take up this huge region of space. But that gives you an idea of how how individual systems will be laid out in space.
So this one is a quick sidebar. When you're in the scanning view right now, pretty much all the system itself has unique stars that are based on the attributes of the star itself. The system view always has the same star. Not for much longer. Now the system view will have the representative of the star that is in the system itself. The size, the color, the attributes of the star will be reflective of the thing that is actually in the game, which is
it's
pretty
also then is a function of what is around as well. This is a universe grounded in science, so it does have correlation.
Oh, here's the other.
Well, yeah, like certain stars give off different heat. Heat is a big deal in this game. I like the idea is that these landscapes are like huge sites that have to be traveled through and kind of unlock multiple pieces of it. We played around with it a little bit in the last playtest. I'm not 100% like on board yet. Seems interesting, but we'll have to see.
Look at this cool shit.
So this is you narrowing in, like, rather than doing 360 degrees, this is you wanted to scan with higher detail a particular area. So this is like
this is just directional scan.
What's over there and scanning down. So you can think of this as you've done the global scan, and maybe you just detected someone has just pinged in a landscape somewhere. They're trying to see what's there, and then that pops up in your global scan. Now you don't really know where they are because you were doing a very vague scan. You want to dial in. You can okay, they're over there somewhere, and you can start to dial in and track them down.
I haven't even seen this before.
Yeah, this is this I saw this morning. So this is, I mean, obviously this is.
I wonder what view this is because, like, obviously they don't have the ship right here.
It's very like
from pre-visualization type stuff. This is Dotson client. This is basically working out the visual language of what it would look like. You can kind of see if I flip back quite quickly.
I do like that visual for directional scanner. I wish that we could do something like that for directional scanner because so many people don't like that is one of the biggest questions. It's like, well, how do I know what direction my directional scanner is? Spoiler, it's where your camera's pointed. But like that's not a thing that players inherently know or even are told. So that visual much better like indicates like, hey, you're seeing things in this band. So but
the different levels of how stuff is being worked on. So this is much more advanced. This is now like into the clients. This we've shown before is visualization.
The third slide, not the second slide.
Yeah.
He can't be trusted.
Yeah, I can't play. Damn you.
One of the comments is about submarines, and there is a lot of the submarine tension.
Yes, you can see it if you have the probe window open. You can see your cone, but even then, I've had plenty of people where it's not overly obvious that moving the physical camera of your ship, like your camera angle, is the thing that controls the cone, right? That takes a lucky moment of realization if somebody doesn't tell you.
That we want in this game. We want you to have that feeling of vulnerability, but also of the ability to go silent. To be able to go through the universe, play the game the way you want to play.
Engage silent running mode. Shut off the diesel engines.
Coast.
Yeah.
Fans of Hunt for Red October.
They are very, very into the idea of being quiet versus loud in Frontiers. It hasn't quite paid off yet, but it is kind of interesting. You know, the idea that a ship could theoretically like hide in the debris and then pounce on somebody and have it not be detectable ahead of time because they're not giving off any heat or anything that would be noticeable. Kind of interesting. Again, this is the kind of thing that would work in this game, but would be very alien in EVE, both from like the engine point of view, but also just how a player expectation point of view.
October will rejoice.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
One ping only.
One ping only. All right.
Okay, so this
okay.
is now prototypes of skill shots. So the idea being that you can see there's a couple of turrets on it. The turrets are moving at different speeds. I think all of them apart from one are moving at the same speed. And then as you fire missiles, they go where you are pointing, essentially, at that moment in time. But not where the ship is pointing, where the turrets are pointing. So this allows you to have more granular control for like higher damage weapon systems.
People keep on saying, oh, EVE Online is just submarines in space, and they're like, gotcha. We're going to take that to its logical conclusion. More potential for friction and conflict because in EVE I do low-sec DED sites and it's just a game of D-scan and chicken. Exactly. Yeah, and this is actually one of the things that, like, when I first got into Echoes, that was something that was fascinating to me, which is that I think that they've eventually implemented something, but when Echoes first came out, it did not have directional scan, which made low-sec extremely interesting to me. And because, like, on the one hand, I was paranoid. Like, if I go into a low-sec belt and I start mining, I have no way of detecting that someone is about to drop on me, right? And that made me very paranoid. But low-sec in Echoes, you can't gank on gates too, right? I think that the guns are just a lot stronger on gates in low-sec, if I remember correctly. But this isn't back then. My point is that, like, when I went into... if I'm going to mine in low-sec, I do not have the protection of directional scan to help me, like, be aware if somebody is coming after me. However, they also don't have directional scan. So if somebody was to catch me in Echoes, they would have to basically be going to every single belt to just see what's there. Which, unlike EVE, where you could just use D-scan to quickly identify that somebody is in a belt and then go there. And so it actually felt really good to be in this, like, paranoia, but also be somewhat hidden. To the point where it made me really think about what would happen if they got rid of the ubiquity of directional scan in EVE Online. My first instinct, being a person who's lived in low-sec most of my EVE career, was like abhorrent. Like, that's abhorrent. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, man, that could be so interesting. The idea that somebody actually has to physically get on. We do have that in faction warfare sometimes. Like, you can scan a site, but there's a difference between scanning a site, knowing what's in there, and sending in a lone pilot to get an eye on where everybody is in the site, right? Like, that happens a lot. So this idea of, like, oh man, maybe somebody would have to actually, like, troll through stuff in order to find somebody, and, like, it almost feels like it puts it on a little bit more of an even playing field. You can't see me, I can't see you. That I found very, very interesting. But on the other hand, like, if CCP was just like to change directional scan tomorrow, the player base would rebel because the game is built on the way it is right now. They could theoretically do that kind of thing, but it would be a big difference. It's not just a matter of the technical effect. It's not just a matter of how much development effort it would take to make that change. There's also a social effort. There's a social disruption where the expectations of what the game is becomes altered irrevocably if you would do such a thing. So this is why I said, like, EVE Frontiers for years will argue about stuff in EVE Online. Oh, they should get rid of local in nullsec. They should, blah, 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 blah. People would always talk about this idea or that idea. And one of the things that Scarcity did was take some of those things that we would just sit there and debate about endlessly in circles and actually tried them and actually did them and actually saw what it did with things like Blackout in nullsec. And it was wildly unpopular. It was a big problem for people. And so now CCP has this separate sandbox to, like, reimagine how we can think about the universe. To be a lot closer, honestly, to what CCP originally intended EVE Online to be. But EVE Online has kind of grown away, increasingly over time, EVE Online has grown away from what its original intent was. Because, I mean, and arguably it could be one of the reasons why EVE Online has been so popular. You know, the more sandboxy, the more hardcore a game is, often the less popular it is, the more it struggles to be a coherent game and not have things like complete takeover from organizations. That's why like full no holds barred PvP games tend to struggle a lot more than PvE games. EVE Online has managed to kind of navigate this over the last 20 years and has come up with a formula that so far works pretty good, certainly better than a lot of the other games that try to do this kind of thing. But with EVE Online well established, they can now experiment with those kind of dream ideas of an actual like sandbox. EVE Online it has sandbox pieces to it, but it also has theme park pieces to it. This is much more just a pure sandbox. So it allows them to do that. You know, there's so many people that want EVE Online to be a pure sandbox, but honestly, it would not be successful if it was. But since EVE Online is successful as it is, it gives them an opportunity to experiment with what would happen if EVE was a pure sandbox. And that is what EVE Frontiers ultimately is. It has less to do with crypto and more to do with what does it look like if EVE's sandbox was in fact the pinnacle thing about it, unlike what EVE Online actually is versus what people describe it as. The only thing I don't like about Frontiers over 4 days I've been playing it is the refuge spam to distract defense guns. Yeah, I mean, it's an early access, early alpha gameplay, so there's going to be lots of little moment-to-moment gameplay stuff that's just, you know? And I agree with that.
Instead of the automatic tracking, of course, you can have both. You can have like automatic turrets that can like defend against stuff, and then you have like your big missiles that you need a bit more manual control over, and you can sort of hide behind. You don't have to
manual
lock
weapons
something on
is
to
kind of
shoot
cool.
so you could hide behind a rock, knowing that someone is about to fly out from it, and then time it right and blow them up.
Yeah, because they follow the rules of occlusion.
Yes.
So they'll fly until they hit something, or until they run out of fuel and explode. But I mean, this is, you know, we've talked in the past before about not just as missiles, but these are just a prototype for main guns in general.
Yeah,
you know,
this could be like artillery. This could be like lasers. It could be
coil guns, and a number of things.
Exactly. Like read a good sci-fi book, and that's what we will deliver.
Lead the target.
Thankfully, science fiction has a lot of opportunity for really cool weapons. Sorry, before we go into this, we go back one. I don't know if you have it in slide 3 from now, whatever. Worth calling out is that we have a playable prototype. Obviously, there's a big difference between.
One of the things that's kind of cool here, so skill shot prototype. The thing is, like, you can see that these turrets have a rotational speed. Now, this is what EVE Online kind of simulates with its combat mechanics. But so this will show that different turrets will actually follow your guns faster. That's very interesting.
Prototyping, and then the future version of this as well, where we have...
And we can see, turret 4 is 3 rads per second. So when they move, we can see, when they move the cursor, we see 2 following subcursors. You have this one with 4 and this one with 1, which is weird because I feel like it should be 3 and 1, but I don't know, whatever. But like, so it looks like these ones with 2.0 rads per second are keeping up, and that's this cursor. And this one, which is 3 rads per second, is a little bit behind, which is this cursor.
And then the future version of this as well, where we have controller support.
Yes, this is being done on a controller, like an Xbox controller. We were going to see if we could find a picture of our
controller support. You've got my attention. You have my attention. I love the games with controller support.
Our intern CCP Mambjorn working on it with a controller. But we're bringing sometime later this year native controller support to.
And it was oddly satisfying to be right-click controllering on a controller with this stuff.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm really excited about with the like the joystick setup I have at home.
That might win me.
It has that trigger finger on the back, being able to just like line up your shot and then pull the trigger, and something like very visceral about that.
Yeah, just for you. It's just you'll still be dying.
Well, okay, all right, asshole. Let's go to the next slide.
So we talked before about modular ships and how the ship should reflect how it is fit. And we've got a lot deeper into that exploration. We've come back to it. We've shown a video at least a year ago now of with the sort of the feral drones. And this is kind of a more detailed exploration of building stuff towards it. So you can see like the ship is made up of a bunch of core sort of modules, and then as you add weapon systems, defensive systems, and so on to the ship itself, you start to like change the visual identity of the ship.
This is something that they have talked about bringing to EVE Online too. So let's hope that they do, where if you put on plates and stuff, it'll actually change the physical geometry on the outside of the ship. In fact, the Navy destroyers that were put in and Navy dreadnoughts utilized something along these lines where I'm not 100% sure what the tech that's going on is. I think it has something to do with the particle system making like solid particles, as it were, that don't move. But they can now add doodads to the outside of ships. There are some well, T3 cruisers are like specific models that are just swapped out based on which subsystem you're using. What we're talking about here is like you can actually add doodads. So like the Harada Oki skins. You know, the Harada Oki skins adds little spikes all across the ship. Like those doodads are not like really they're not part of the model. They're not swapping out the model. They're just adding in new doodads to the ship. So you could do that where if they put on like plates, then it would put like bulky plate effects on the sides of the ship. That is something that they have actually talked about doing in EVE Online a couple years ago. They just before or just around the same time as Uprising, because it was tied to those faction ships that they put in. And we've seen them kind of use this in things like skins and new ships and stuff in the future. Like that kit bashing technique is also a big part of how they built the Deathless ships. But this tech has not been brought on to like dynamically adjusting stuff, probably because like in order to do that, the ship, like how does it communicate? Here's a good example in EVE. So in EVE, if you got two ships on grid, you and your buddy are flying around, like say in a mission, and you shoot a dude, you will see if your laser or whatever it is hits or misses, right? You will see like it'll go off somewhere if it misses, and it goes and hits the dude if it hits. Your friend, if they watch you, will always see you hit, because his client does not have the real-time information about whether or not you hit. It only has the information about whether or not you shot. And so his client can't show whether or not you hit or missed. Likewise, I wonder if that is possibly one of the problems where it's like, it reminds me actually of the infrastructure hubs, right? The infrastructure hubs were supposed to be able to see all of the doodads that are turned on the infrastructure hubs, but you only get to see them if you have access to that information otherwise, right? Like if you're in the Alliance or whatever it is that gives you the right to see what doodads that are there without hacking it first. Like that is what allows it to now visibly show in space. And CCP, I think Fozzie once pointed out that that was a bug, but like they've also never fixed it. So the issue with like these kinds of visuals that involve actual like information, if that information isn't visible to the client, then the proper rendering of the thing may also be not visible to the client. And that could be a big piece of why they've had problems with that implementation in EVE. Now, EVE Frontiers, whole new universe, whole new aspect of how things are managed. So, you know, we'll see. It also isn't true in EVE Frontiers yet. So this is something that they've talked about in both games and has not been put into either game. So, I mean, besides stuff like turrets, like what turrets are available is obviously visible on a ship. And some particle effects, like if you have a module running, obviously that effect can be seen as well. But like the fact that a module is fit that isn't a turret isn't necessarily visible to anybody beside to any other players. Either way,
ship. So you're able to not only ascertain what people are doing, but perhaps even like hide it. Think of things like Q ships in World War II. You can do things like if you see a bunch of ships and one of them is really slow because it's heavily laden and doesn't have all of the weapons, you can say, oh, the loot's probably in that one, and the other ones have guns everywhere. Okay, well, those are the escorts, and you can visually see the difference.
There was an old like Windows 98, I think, maybe, or maybe it was like an XP.
Well, it's funny because what he just described is totally doable in EVE, right? Because you can see, oh, that one's slower, so it must be bogged down, and this one has a bunch of guns. You know, there's been plenty of times where you alt click on a ship to go zoom in on it, and you're gonna be like, "Oh no, they have no guns. They must be newts or whatever else." Frontiers teams has been pulling the client apart too. So one day the EVE Online devs may be able to make use of some of that work. That should make it easier to crunch some of the bugs. Exactly, Jeff. That's true. They started with a fork of the EVE client to make EVE Frontiers. So they are tackling issues that would be really cool to have happen to EVE Online in an environment that doesn't actually disrupt the universe of EVE Online yet. And then they can always port things over, theoretically, once they've solved the problems.
Star Trek game that I remember playing at like a computer camp years and years ago, where over time, shut up, listen, it was real. That computer game is probably why I'm here, assholes. Okay, that's my childhood. Give me a break.
We support you.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Bowman.
Yeah.
Unlike some people in this room. Anyway, so I could tell. Anyway, the way it worked was, as you began with a very basic version of like the basic Federation ship, and as you did things in the game, you unlocked different saucers, you unlocked different nacelles.
Yep.
For the engines, you unlocked different scanning arrays, and those all changed the way the ship looked and acted.
Yep.
And a lot of that is what's being displayed here, where you have the opportunity to get different elements or discover different elements or build different elements. Those elements then all kind of click together Lego style.
Yep. So it's going to be fundamental to the core ships of the game. This is not just going to be like
to go back to T3Cs, the reason the way that T3Cs are built is the reason why it took so much longer for T3Cs to get skins. And like anytime they do anything with visuals about ships or whatever, T3 cruisers always are like the exception, and they come later because they're such a like the way that they get built in space is so. It was made in 2008. Could have been done better. The Frontier structure code made me hope that they'll one day replace Citadels with newer, better POS structures again. Wouldn't that be neat?
Range.
Yeah, this is
going to be pretty much fundamental to the game.
I know, Bowman, you've been working a lot on this recently too. We're working a lot on getting this kind of off the ground. This is a pretty big shift away from the way we've been doing it for basically forever.
So we're going to, in our history, in the world's history, we have technologies which are sort of solid state. This is the ship. This is how it works. It's pre-built. We also want to allow the players to generate the ship design that fits their play style, and have them exchanging ideas and skill sets and experience through I've unlocked things that you haven't unlocked.
Right.
Now we can combine in order to do new things. So that's coming. That's on the journey that we're on.
Shout out to CCP Armageddon, who revealed that CCP Hex was in fact playing.
That's true, by the way. 100%.
That is actually just a fact.
Like visualization concept people are just bananas. They're just like, I need Legos to visualize this.
I need Legos, rooms, and wine.
Every company.
Maybe. So it's less how, I mean, it's how T3Cs work, but it's how the object model factory builds things, right? There's a piece to the engine that takes the ship and the data and all that stuff and actually turns it into a physical thing to be rendered in space, right? There's a factory that does that in the code, and that's the thing. Like they created a special way to do it for T3Cs that were very special. Like it was they built it with the idea of T3Cs in mind, and obviously didn't make it as flexible. It's also, yes, it is why T3Cs and T3 Destroyer. Well, T3 Destroyer is a little bit less so, but definitely why T3Cs are not in Skinner.
The last 30 years I've been ahead of the Lego set.
But worth calling out as well, this isn't just rainbows and sunshines. First of all, this takes a long time to get right.
Technologies too.
Technology, etc. This also is difficult to get cool, because usually what happens is that every ship looks the same. There's a big risk.
The real problem here is actually like the more individual decisions that have to be made in the moment of rendering, and I mean like on the computational decisions, the more resource intensive it is, right? Like we already have problems when you get like several thousand ships in space. Even if you're zoomed out, managing all of those models in space and the visuals of it can be tricky for the client. Obviously, LOD, level of detail, will allow them to kind of do that in the same way that they do with skins. But like, what happens if every ship that flies by, it not only has to figure out what ship it is to figure out how to render it, but it also has to figure out all these extra exceptions to put things on it. It could just make the rendering engine take a little bit longer. And when you're pushing things to its extreme, it could be an unacceptable performance hit. So that's another thing to consider. Even when trying to load a grid when they've got various structures on the other side of the gate makes everything lag. Exactly. And okay. So when doing rendering, one of the biggest things is like being able to do everything in a single pass or in as few passes as possible. And so like you put up the thing and it's there, and then you put something on that thing. You've got to make a method to do all that stuff without triggering multiple rendering passes, which can be a pain in the ass. I can tell you that right now as somebody who's tried to do stuff in Unity and whatnot. So, you know, do you really want it to go through the calculations to figure out where this box goes on this model just so it can show it fly past you, right?
There. And also in the story of Frontier, not every faction goes towards this technology.
Yeah, exactly.
So not all ships are like that. But what we're doing is like we come like as CCP Bowman, a very original dev name by the way. It's super original. CCP Bowman said like we're committing to this philosophy for a part of the game. It's not like a binary change either. Because there also is technology that is just like, you know, a racing car is designed precisely to be single one of a racing car.
We talked about that a while back when we talked about the concept of like the difference in digital physics of a car, like an internal combustion engine. Like people saying, can't you just make it just go as fast as you want then if you do like that in the game? It's like, well, just like in real life, a regular car, like a Honda Accord, has a certain speed that it can do, a certain efficiency. It doesn't cost that much, but then your custom built race car does a lot more and goes a lot faster. Then you get the world land speed record cars, which go way faster. Yeah, but it's like no one is taking the kids to school in a land speed record rocket car because it's very inefficient to do that.
Yeah,
and it's just not going to work. Yes.
Yeah.
And what we're discussing is how do we take this from concept to just a thing that lives there, even though it's far away from this cool awesomeness. And what we're discussing is, for example, cargo containers. I can impact the hull by attaching different sorts of cargo containers.
Someone mentioned from car to...
There doesn't have to be a trade-off, but these are challenges that they got to figure out, right? It's easy right now to just be like, oh, look, it's a Tristan. Load the Tristan model, right? If the Tristan doesn't have a specific model because it can be customized, that makes that process of the object factory a lot more tricky. Hasn't this problem already been solved in No Man's Sky's Corvettes? Solved is a very strong word, right? Like, No Man's Sky has absolutely worked on this, but No Man's Sky doesn't have to be as performant as EVE Online or EVE Frontiers has to be. And solved is a tricky way of putting it. There are so many problems in No Man's Sky, especially when it comes to Corvettes. But if you think about it with No Man's Sky, actually No Man's Sky is an interesting example of this exact same sort of thing, right? Because like we didn't get Corvettes in No Man's Sky because Hello World thought it'd be cool for there to be multiplayer ships in No Man's Sky. That was not where it came from. What that came from is that Hello Games is working on their new game, right? Light No Fire, which is built in the same engine as No Man's Sky, and therefore like one of the things Light No Fire is, while No Man's Sky is this multi-solar system, quadrillion solar systems and planets and Light No Fire takes place on one planet, so it's like, but it's like a real Earth-sized planet, so it's a different kind of scale, different kind of environment. And as part of this, they wanted to add multiplayer ships, right? Like naval ships, like in the water, like rafts and stuff. And so they had to build a tech that allowed people, like multiple players and multiple NPCs, to be on a vessel that is moving by its own rules, right? And so when they built that for Light No Fire, as a result, that like the consequence to that is that you also kind of get Corvettes, not for free, but pretty close. So the Corvettes actually came out of the development of Light No Fire and developing tools for that. So in the same sort of way here, given the fact that EVE Frontiers is built on a fork of EVE Online, it could very well be that all this effort, which again, the money came from external, right? Most of the money for EVE Frontiers' development came from investors and its own, like, walled off kind of funding system of people paying for EVE Frontiers or whatever, right? They're not shunting money from, they're not using your subs to EVE Online to pay for EVE Frontiers development. However, EVE Frontiers development could theoretically be utilized for EVE Online development. It could be like you could get the work done. You can get the development hours done to solve problems, to develop things within EVE Online's engine that could then be, if they want to, moved over to EVE Online. So this is pretty cool. Yeah, and No Man's Sky does not need to render thousands of ships at the same time, and it does a pretty bad job when it has to. Lets them beta test the tech in a live environment. So from a certain point of view, it was free. May have even saved money to add the No Man's Sky feature. Yeah. No Man's Sky's models are not as detailed as EVE models. Again, like, especially when you start getting into Corvettes because of how it's constructed and blah, blah, blah. It's a good example. It's a good example, I think, of the comparison between the two. But it is like No Man's Sky as a game just has very, very different requirements, especially when it comes to performance, than EVE Online does.
A rally car.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's a good example. Especially like Group B, when so it used to be rally cars had to have a certain number of production cars to be allowed to be a rally car, and it was like 2,000 or something. Yep. And then they were like, what if we made it like 10? And then the manufacturer just made these absolute monsters. Sure. And then like a year or two later, like, oh, maybe not, maybe we should go back.
But as CCP Jötunn puts it, this one time at computer game camp.
Oh my fucking god. Listen, it was a cool camp.
All right, let's move on.
So, Fruity Loops.
This one is a really cool one, and it requires a little bit of explanation. So on the left is an asteroid with a ton of spheres covering it, and on the right is an asteroid without a ton of spheres. Now, the collision meshes of the game essentially are just spheres mostly, and that means that the bigger, more detailed the surface of something gets, the more spheres you have to put in to start to cover it, and that becomes very, very inefficient.
Yeah. To be very clear too, just because people will probably ask, this is not what the collision mesh would actually look like for this model. This is as detailed as we can get it. It is probably more realistic that it would be just a lot of, or just a couple very large spheres.
Realistically, it's going to be like 10 spheres rather than 1,000, like it's probably showing here.
Yeah.
So I do want to point out, like, this is a big thing in game development as well. Hold on. It's cool to see tech coming to fruition. CCP has been talking about this sort of stuff for years, but they never were able to justify putting development money behind it in EVE Online. Yes, exactly. So besides the Perlian noise thing going on over here, like, this is actually one of those things that ends up being a giant pain in the ass for game developers, right? So, you know, you'll especially see this in a lot of other games, you know, where like something's geometry and its hitbox are not quite in alignment with one another. Yeah, collision detection, exactly. So colliders, like making a collision mesh that would match this asteroid would be so painful, because ultimately, like, it has to be broken down to a calculation. So you have mesh colliders, or you have different colliders, and generally speaking, you want your colliders to be very basic shapes: squares, spheres, and cylinders, right? Because ultimately, like, behind the scenes, there has to be a actual, like, calculation, right? So it's like, okay, well, my character is at this point and then moves to this point. Does that pass within any of these colliders? Well, those colliders actually have to also just be math. Does this, you know, this collider is at this point, it's a sphere and it has this radius. So does this thing, my ship, come within the radius distance of this point, the collider? Yes? Well, then there's a collision, right? And if you think about it, here's the problem with software, right, that people don't think about. You can't just be like, oh yeah, just check to see if you've collided with something. Because before you check, you don't actually know whether or not it's collided with something. So you can't check only the things that you might be colliding with, because how do you know what you might be colliding with? So oftentimes, it has to check against every single possible thing that could be happening. This is actually why, like, for a long time, on-grid boosts were not able to be done. Because the idea that, like, and it's also why directional scan has to be on a hotkey instead of something that's done automatically. Because, like, if you're going to do a D-scan, when you hit D-scan, it doesn't just scan everything within 14.3 AU, because it doesn't know yet what is within 14.3 AU. So what it actually has to do is check your distance versus literally everything that it could possibly be in the system with you, and then checks to see whether or not it is within range and then filters it out, right? And so having extremely complex mesh structures like this can end up making collision be incredibly painful. But historically, in other games, they've added on like big clunky meshes, or big clunky colliders, which is why like sometimes even in Eve, right, there'll be like a hole, or there'll be a thing that looks like you can fly through it, but you'll just bounce off of it. It's because they use bigger, easier to process colliders as a way of doing it, as opposed to trying to get every single little point there to make it so that you can fly through it without bumping into it. So what they're doing here is trying to make the most efficient process to turn architecture into colliders. Maybe ray tracing, but the ray is not infinite range, but rather limited range. Well, that is even a ray trace has to hit something for it to detect, right? If you shone a ray at this right image and it doesn't have any colliders, it will hit nothing. It can't hit anything. There's nothing there to hit, right? Now, lighting ray tracing is a little bit different because there's shaders and surfaces and meshes and sort of stuff like that. But when it comes to like collision detection, it needs a collider for it to actually collide with it, right? And that includes the ray. Furthermore, ray tracing is also incredibly heavy, right? Because you have to basically trace every possible ray and where it's going to go, and then do those different calculations. So that's a whole separate issue that has its own heavy lifting that you don't necessarily want to evoke all the time, but it is a component to it. Like when I built my game Playton, the way it works is that each piece, when it wants to move forward, it actually shines a ray it does a ray directly forward 1 unit, and if it collides, because it has to have a collider, if it collides with the next piece's collider, then it tells that piece to also move forward. So, you know, the back piece gets told to move forward. It points, sees that there's something up there, tells it to move forward. It points, sees that there's something up there, tells it to move forward, so on and so forth. So ray tracing gets used all over the place, but ray tracing for graphics and stuff is incredibly heavy. Ray tracing for collisions would probably be even heavier.
But we are doing a lot of work in the engine to move towards mesh-based collision. That's super important because it allows, like, when you have these really big objects and structures that you want to fly accurately between, when you want to shoot your rocket just around the corner or something, you don't want it to explode off an invisible ball.
Right.
So it's making the world feel more grounded.
This is some Bloodborne shit, by the way, here on the left.
Yeah, mesh-based collisions are possible. You can do them. They're just a lot harder and a lot more computationally heavy, and so they're going to need to optimize it a lot better in order to make it work. And there's other ways to optimize it too, like how often you check for collisions, et cetera, et cetera.
For some of the more technical people out there, it's an n-squared problem, which means that as things go up, you're going to continue to double each time as you move through the problem. Yeah. So it gets more and more inefficient. So it's not something you can do continually, but we're designing with that new ability, and we're adding that to the gameplay. So we're going to be able to do line of sight occlusion, and also do prediction based upon whether or not you're going to be able to shoot something and hit somebody or not. So that'll change the way the game plays.
Oh yeah.
And it also allows us to like build our complicated assets and drop them into the algorithms that generate these meshes. So you can see here a Stargate, for example,
cool
which it shows you all the mesh-based collision instead of just like, even before, this wouldn't have worked as a sphere, obviously. So we did have the ability to use, they're called capsules. They look like spheres that have been elongated.
Yeah, long.
So we would have had a bunch of those kind of filling that up, and you can see easily how either you need a lot of them overlapping all the time, or you accept inaccuracies. So we can take the models coming from the 3D artists and just kind of drop them into the systems and get much more accurate collisions, which is actually a really important aspect of making the game feel immersive, because when you shoot something, or we've all done it, you hit an invisible wall in a video game and you kind of, like, why can't I jump over this like 1 foot high hedge? You know, like, it doesn't make sense.
I think obviously anybody who's ever played Frontier, or one of the first things I did when I had access to the WSD controls to try and like zoom through some structure, and running into an abrupt invisible wall and hitting, hearing the collision sound where there clearly should not be a wall is one of those jarring things in gaming.
Sometimes we can get away with it because people are just too afraid to go near the things.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Moon Eater, its collision right now I think is like
It's so
10
bad.
spheres.
Yeah, so bad.
But people are just too scared to get too close to it.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can update stuff like that as well.
dangerous
We can bring this into.
I just love the visual style of this.
It's very like neon retro sci-fi punk.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, don't show this to Maximum Cats. He'll have an aneurysm.
Far too many colors.
There's not in
There's
the brand
some
guidelines.
mode of scanning or something
Yeah.
that is good. I mean, the maximum cast can find a way.
Controls. I didn't have any good images for this one, but
Hey,
we have them.
We have
Imagine this.
we have controls. There's probably a control slide in there somewhere. Just know that there are controls.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is a refinement of like WSD, bringing in controller support, like I mentioned.
Yep.
And controller support, importantly, has analog.
Yeah.
There was also a question earlier about whether we're going to add different abilities within controls. We're going to continue to evolve the controls. We're not satisfied yet. You're not satisfied yet. We're going to continue to modify those until it feels better. Each time we do a release, our goal is to make it a little bit better for you based upon what we were able to achieve during the time.
Having played Eve Frontiers, that is actually like the biggest thing to me as the difference between Eve Online and Eve Frontiers is like the physics-based movement. Like in Eve, you are a sphere with a ray. In Eve Frontiers, you actually are like an object with a direction. So like if you want to turn around, you actually have to like do the slow bank turnaround because your engines are pointing that way. You just don't suddenly get to start thrusting in the opposite direction. And so like the changing over to like the controls to being WASD and like it feels much more like you're flying the ship as opposed to Eve Online, which is very much like you're playing the UI, as it were.
Yeah.
And your analog control, instead of just like A to go left, but being able to like use a stick or a joypad, is going to become way more like fidelity, essentially.
Sure.
Like it's way more accurate.
Cool.
And then what's everyone's favorite thing to look at? That's right, JPEGs. So we have some more finished ships
Hell yeah,
that are
look at
coming
that.
in soon.
Textures.
Very
Texture,
Mimitar.
baby.
So gray. Oh, red.
Look at that. Does anyone remember the original model of this one when it had about 8 voxels
That
or
was
something?
true. It was the little guy.
Little guy that
Pluggy.
just
No, it was
wasn't
this Pluggy?
pluggy. No, was this pluggy?
I think this was Pluggy.
Yes.
And this was, yeah,
this
because like the
this is
front part
pluggy.
was like
Yep.
the prongs for the plug. It literally was made of like 8 cubes or something.
Yeah, it was
kind of dumb. And then some more ships. I can't remember how many ships I put in.
it's a lot of them.
There's a few of them.
Good looking
There's a
ships.
ship. Yep, definitely. a ship.
Some. I mean, and these
Yeah,
two
that
are
was
all fairly small.
I like this
ships.
little like.
Yes.
Yeah, his little mining claws down
Yeah.
there. These are all fairly small ships. I think these are all. No, there's nothing here bigger than a frigate. Except for this. That's a ship that
Hey!
exists in the game right now. But
Way updated.
a lot of what
It's
is
the
being
I-beam.
developed right now is like visual language for a lot of these things too. And especially if we want to start introducing these more modular ship designs once you get towards bigger vessels.
Yes.
You're going to see a lot of sort of the Toyota Camrys of the world in smaller ships, and then the bigger ships will become more discreet.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. All right. Base building. It's when you build your base.
Wow.
So this is something I'm looking forward to. This is what we call ghost build mode. This is the idea of being able to basically drop a bunch of
Aura would constantly say, "I captain, setting course heading to XYZ, XYZ." You'd feel more like a captain than just messing with the UI. I wonder when we're going to get more information about the Aura AI. I wonder. I wonder if we're going to get more information about the Aura AI before FanFest, right? Because like clearly they did not intend to put in those things into the Hobo leaks. Did you not see that? They are absolutely working on it. They are. Hold on. Can I find it? Can I find it? Is it still around? That's 20 days ago. No. Here we go. Aura Guidance Beta. Enter message. Aura, I'm sorry, something went wrong. Please try again. Hello, Captain. How may I help? Aura's here to guide you through New Eden Journey. Select this option to chat with her whenever you like. Aura Guidance. Sorry, this feature has been turned off. Come back later. Thinking and the ability and where to put in the string. Yeah, no, they are absolutely working on a LLM powered Aura within Eve. This was, I don't remember when they put it in, but it was like a month ago. I hope the number one question is, how do I uninstall you like Cortana? Well, you just don't click on it.
spots around where you're going to build something, but you don't have to have everything on it just yet. So you can plan out your base in advance, which is pretty cool. So then once they're there, you just go drop the materials in, and they'll start to construct.
Yeah, no, look, we had that conversation about Aura the other day. I think this is potentially a decent practical application of it, given the fact that they can have her be basically trained up on Eve data specifically. But either way, that's, again, I don't have enough information to really dig into that topic right now. Just know that, like, those pieces are there in the game. But again, like, I think that they did not intend on having that hit Tranquility yet, per se, or at least not have us notice it yet, because they haven't put any, there's been no official announcements about it in any way or anything like that. So I don't know. Aura, say GF and local. Yes. I've long since said that, like, we need to do more stuff with Aura. I want, like, the entire I want all show info and the agency stuff to be rebranded as Aura, so that way, like, anytime you're getting a mission, you're getting it from Aura. You know, she's acting as an intermediary. When you're looking up information, you know, you're interacting with your shipboard computer. But that's not what we're talking about today.
When they have the required materials.
Actually, you have a slide too in here somewhere of
so cool.
I do. So this is what it looked like when you're depositing stuff into it. Now, this is the very, very first time you can build stuff together, because you can deposit things into other people's. Someone hit the air horn. So this is like the very first iteration of tribe building gameplay. So still going to be limited to like the network node and L points for now. That is coming in the future, but you can build stuff together. So no longer do you have to have everyone give it to one person who then deploys it. They can deploy it and say, hey, we need this material, just come and drop it here. So you log in later, you see
you can contribute when other people are offline.
Exactly. So you can.
Okay, so somebody can put down, like, the framework and multiple people can come and construct it. That's cool. That is not even what I needed when it comes to Frontier gameplay. Like, I literally, you know, in PAX Day, you can just set your plot to be for your clan instead of just for yourself, and then clan members can interact with it just normal. And then you have to put, like, each container you can set to be clan or personal. That's all I needed for Frontiers. This is not necessary, but the idea that you can set up a construction point and then have people kind of donate to it is really good for a few things. Like, for instance, in a previous iteration in a previous cycle, it was like almost impossible to build a Stargate, not because simply because you could not have a single ship that could carry all of the pieces, of the Stargate construction in it at once, and therefore could just never deploy it. So the idea that you could, like, set up the scaffolding for something and then bring pieces to it over time will greatly enable people to do larger scale constructions, even by themselves, let alone with as a what is it, tribe.
Can really be building it together. And like I said, this doesn't have to be just one thing. You could build your whole base out like this at the same time. So you build, like, the main manufacturing, like, let's say you're XD, one of our big industrial tribes within the game, and you want to build out your industrial.
Shout out to XD, Wesley Pipes, friend of the channel. XD is recruiting, and Wesley hangs out a lot in our Discord and even posts his videos in our media channel. So hey.
Powerhouse at some L point. You can map it out, set it out, put all the structures you need, plan it, and have your members come in and contribute stuff as and when you can, and you can figure out ways to reward them for that, for example. So
cool.
Pretty cool.
Like
and
projects,
some new updated shaders will be coming as well. This is a little bit further out, but instead of just using like the sort of yellow sparkly thing which looks for everything, there'll be updated ones that show the different states, whether it's selected, whether it's been built.
The yellow sparkly thing is also from EVE Online.
It is. So we're moving into getting our own ones from that, and again giving Frontier its distinctive visual identity.
Cool. Yes.
And this is way further off by comparison, but just because ships get to be modular wide-out structures as well. So these are basically explorations of modular structures and how they would work when you start to configure individual aspects of the structure itself. So perhaps, like, the base assembler can build modules, but then you add in something that allows it to build specific types of more advanced modules. Now it looks different.
Builds them more quickly.
Again, this is cool. I like it. I think it makes a lot more sense for structures than for ships, just because of the, like, how many are going to be and how mobile they're going to be. But, like, once again, I'm still upset that iHubs are supposed to show information visibly, but then they don't. Like, let's fix that, guys. We can't promise visually interesting structures. This goes all the way back to like the Athenor, or not Athenors, Asbels, right? Asbels were actually originally supposed to show you if there's a Titan in manufacturing, and they ultimately were not able to do that. Actually, hold on, let me see. Can I pull that up? Hold on. When they first showed engineering complexes, when they first showed the engineering, I found it. Not Asbel, Sodio. No, wait, yeah, Sodio. Where is it? Come on. Come on. There we go. Look at that. We never got this. This was intended to be them showing Titans under construction. Never happened in the game. So, like, these are cool to show off, but, like, to me, it just makes me a little bit, like, sad for the things where this happened before and then didn't work out. So, we'll see.
Exactly, like a speed upgrade, like efficiency upgrade, things like that. And then you'll be able to see it visually on what it looks like in space.
Yep, pimp my base.
No, I know that there was concern about the intel about it too, but if I remember correctly from CCP, they just said we ended up not being able to do that. I don't think it was an intel issue. I think it was a technical issue because again, like it pops up again when it comes to iHubs and stuff. So I'm 90% sure it wasn't from intel risk, but yeah. But that is why the Sodio is shaped that way, was because it was originally intended for that. In the same way that, like, if you ever notice that faxes look kind of weird, faxes were originally supposed to transform when they're in Logi mode, which is kind of like why the Apostle looks like it's supposed to fold but doesn't. There's been moments like this in the past.
My base, exactly.
So there's not just a, because you, the player coming into somebody's base, probably won't know exactly what every single individual item is, but you should be able to look at something and be like, hey, those spins on the top of that thing, I know those are, heat sinks, and that means that the base is running.
Or analyze. Look, I refuse to talk too much about the good or bad of Aura being put into the game until we have more information about what it's actually going to look like, because boy howdy is the devil in the details when it comes to that, right? Like, I can say, oh yeah, they'll probably do it this way or that way or whatever, but like, who knows? We'll have to see.
Faster than it would be normally. Yep. So I can be pretty confident they're building whatever.
Grounded in science, baby.
Hey, here we go. Grounded in science. We nailed it. We're done.
Then again, I don't have a picture for it, but
we do actually have some stuff for this.
Pretend it's there.
Imagine this.
Yes, we do have stuff there. Just
to hold hands.
So, like, one of the things we're working towards, for example, is the ability to upgrade a network node to essentially like a larger version of one that then supports. Like, you can think of it almost like lily pads, with like a big trunk in the center and then these like little ones hanging off the side of it, which can support further network nodes. So you can start to build things out, and all live together
so
as
like
a space communist, perhaps.
A central node, and then auxiliary nodes off of that, and then auxiliary nodes off of those nodes. Just kind of stretching out. You can start to see pretty quickly how a city might form in that way.
That's right. I did ask CCP Hex if she had any good visualizations of this, and she showed me a picture made in Microsoft Paint, which I was like, did I draw that like a year ago? And she was like, I think so.
I think we should also address the fact that we are aware that right now we don't have the balance we need long term for building, as far as the ability to defend it versus it being destroyed, and that's something that
I gotta say, this makes me nervous. This makes me really nervous. They were supposed to come out with tribal base building already. They missed it, and now they don't even have concept art. They don't have any visuals to show us about it. Just allow us, for now maybe, just allow us to set our base to be tribe access, and then other tribal members can access it. I don't need to be able to build all this crazy stuff out or from it. I just need my buddy to be able to come in and grab stuff from my base or drop stuff off of my base.
We are working on.
I have a slide for that.
He does have a slide for that. Let's go back to the slides. Here we go.
See?
Wow, nailed it.
Being addressed.
Okay, so just be very clear. This is a little tongue-in-cheek because while we don't have a ton of images, we know, we are aware. We are all of us.
We have been for a while.
All of us aware for a while that base
see it in chat also
defense
discussion on the
sucks real bad
We're
right
not
now.
ignoring you. We really aren't.
That's one of you guys were talking about this earlier, at least touched on it with like the fact that the guns don't prioritize things correctly. That's probably just a small piece of what they're about to touch.
No, we know it's
what
bad.
we're not doing is knee-jerking it just to make people a little bit happy right now. We have done a couple of tweaks, just sort of low-hanging fruit to try and make the experience a little bit less painful. I'm not going to say better, I'm going to say less painful.
Sure.
But we are doing a fundamental design around this whole loop of attack defense that should feel good, unique to the game, and you won't be just like logging off and having a wind come destroy your entire base because your turrets are just garbage. Like that won't happen once this comes in. This is again a little bit further off, and honestly, we should do a full stream on this once we're further into it. And I think maybe in
but further off is it's March plan.
So the first iteration.
We have an improvement in March.
Yes,
exactly.
It will be better. It won't be final.
Yes.
So when I see a comment of just fix it or then fix it,
it's not going to be pause timer. It's not going to be up well rows.
Fixing it is a series of changes, and we're going to make those changes without breaking the game as we do it. So
and we also don't want to go too like before. Frontier was way too much defense. We took it way far.
Again, okay, everybody keeps on talking about the aura. I will say, like, the chances that aura will actually be able to take actions in game, very, very low. Doesn't make sense, and it's an LLM. It would have to be a whole separate. If it is an LLM, it'd be a whole separate thing. What I can't wait is for the subreddit dedicated to terrible fits that aura has come up with.
Too much into just annihilation, but Frontier is a game more about annihilation than too much safety.
What I'm nervous about is the Reddit posts about how they managed to turn aura into a Nazi. Waiting for that one too. That's the real one that I think CCP is gonna. Like that, it's less about people not liking it or liking it, and more about making sure that people can't do very bad things. They do not want to be in the news because their in-game chatbot decided to, pull a grok.
But what the team is looking at is defense in terms of shields and walls. They're looking at more types of turrets that do their job way better, that you can configure as well. So there is actually a defense thing. We're also then looking at repair and recovery, so that when you come back, it isn't just a binary thing of healing or gone, but it is something that you can recover from as well. Yes.
Yeah, and like that's a fairly fundamental, large-scale concept, which is why we've taken a lot of time. And CCP Cake Machine spoke a little bit about it in previous streams, where it's such a fundamental aspect of the game that we really want to make sure we get it right and not just overreact.
Sure.
So we're taking a bit of time, but like Phil says, the first iteration of this, the 0 to 1, is coming in March.
That's an interesting idea, and it might be even an interesting idea in like EVE Online too, where it's like, why does every disabling of something, I mean, besides in Tosis Link, but like when you're shooting at something, why does it always result in an explosion? Wouldn't it make kind of sense for you to do so much critical damage to a structure that it like is disabled or disrupted in some critical way without it necessarily blowing up? That could require repair or maintenance. But like if I shoot blaster bolts into a giant structure, I could theoretically get it to turn off. I could theoretically rip holes in it, but I'm not going to make it so there's no more structure. You're not going to shoot a thing so much full of so many holes that there's just not there anymore. So making damage a little bit more dynamic than just it exists and now it's blown up would be pretty cool.
So things will get a lot better pretty soon, and then they'll get really good later on in the year.
Yep. And then paired with the ability to be able to be together at an L point.
Exactly.
Like Tai Seek is mentioning, there's nuance in the...
Whenever I log into an alpha alt, there's Aura and Iris arguing. It's just annoying. We'll just do the thing and like take the 1 plex and buy the skin, and then it's over.
You okay?
He's getting so emotional about it.
He's really excited.
He's sitting there going, man, I wish I could have gone to computer camp.
I'm sorry. I feel so bad for everybody who didn't get to experience the fact that me and CCP Bowman get here dutifully
On
a
time.
half hour ahead of time.
Yeah.
10 minutes ahead of time, CCP Overload stumbles in, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. He's still here well ahead of time, no problem. When's CCP Goodfellow going to get here? 2 minutes before we go live, the man stumbles in with a glass of water and a cold piece of old pizza, and just like, anyway.
Lunchtime.
So busy you can't eat the good lunch.
No shit.
So this stuff will affect things like gates as well, by the way, just because it's not just base,
And-
this is like structures.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
this
there
is
was-
all of the building. This is
Yeah.
all of construction.
Yeah.
And there is Darkspade was mentioning like okay, not necessarily directly that, but this outer shell or like this shield type of concept that can be, and then of course you need to upkeep it, energy, etc.
It all starts to
One Plex is not that expensive to fix the problem once and for all. Posted an idea in the features and ideas section a couple years back that added derelicts into the game. More or less a wreck that didn't blow up had the potential to use it as Vanguard content. Yeah, that would be actually pretty cool if like a certain number of shit, like when you blow up enemy ships, you may actually just to be able to disable it, and you could theoretically like tractor it in and repair it, and then that's an alternative way of getting the ships, right? Like I could kill a Serpentis guy, steal his ship, and like reconstruct it and get a Tristan. That is, I guess, a little bit of like when you kill rats and you get like a Gila blueprint or something. I suppose it's along those lines.
layer on top of each other. We will get there. It's coming piece by piece.
Yep.
Hello, Pilot. I know you want to play this game, but how about we pester you into interacting with the only unskippable cutscene in the game? Okay, look, I'm not saying it's perfect. What I'm saying is that I feel like the opposite would also be a problem, right? Like if you could just ignore it and then it never comes back, that would also be an issue because then people would be like, oh, I missed my opportunity or whatever. So like figuring out how to make that work right. It is a bit odd because it does require you, doesn't it require you to go to a Paragon station, or does it just require you to dock up? Because I don't know. Maybe I should look into this more. I feel like every time I see this complaint comes up, it feels very, no offense to the people making it right now, it kind of feels a little vapid because it feels like there's an easy fix for it, and it's a sandbox game. Fix your problems. And the other half of the design of it is like, well, if it just goes away, then you could accidentally get a situation where it's gone away for somebody who doesn't want it to go away. I know that there's like obviously the whole like forcing you to engage with the premium market is always something that kind of people have a kind of a knee-jerk aversion against. The solution, have a button in the UI to continue the dialogue on login. Well, this goes back to like what I think is that the like Aura should have, if Aura was more like the thing that you're interacting with, and so you transform the agency and show info and all that stuff into Aura. So Aura is the one that kind of interfaces with people for missions and all that sort of stuff. You can make tutorials where it's like, oh yeah, I want to learn about webbing, and you click it and it's like, okay, we'll dock up, and then we have the simulation for it. You know, when we have this kind of interaction, then it could very well be that's like, oh yeah, you have a pending message from Iris, and when you click on it, that's when it triggers it. So that way it's always triggerable, but it sits in the like the sidelines, maybe with a little red dot on it, until you deal with it, right? Like that could work. I don't know, man. I keep hearing complaints about it, and like I want to honor those complaints. I don't know how bad it necessarily is. And it feels to me like just getting one Plex and just doing it. There's lots of things that are annoying in Eve. There's lots of things that are just annoying in Eve, and you just gotta do the thing to make it so it works. You gotta make the preparation. You gotta move the thing to make it so it's staged correctly. Like that's what Eve is all about. Yeah, they give you the correct amount of stuff. It just gives you the Plex. Yeah, but like let's assume that the person has now gotten rid of that Plex. It's still like you still can fix your own problem. EVE Online is about fixing your problems. So it's a blatant dark pattern to the point that it's not a pattern, it's Jehovah's Witness. I mean, yes, the whole like, oh, it's a game trying to force you to be engaged in the premium thing. Like that is obviously something that people criticize about. Calling it a dark pattern, it's not inaccurate, but like as a person who has lived in that sphere for a while, you know, I've heard this whole story from the other side, right? Where it's like, you look at the metrics and you see that somebody who is engaged in the premium currency market once is significantly more likely to do it again, even if they've been given the premium currency to begin with, right? So this idea of like, here's 100 premium currency, now go turn around and spend that premium currency on something is a very, very, very common pattern within free-to-play games. And as was just pointed out, some people don't like it. There are definitely patterns that I feel would be more dark patterny than that, because you could argue that it's just tutorializing the premium market and getting people to at least check it out. And you could argue that players did not know ahead of time that what it was all about, and therefore there are just as likely players who are happy that that functionality is in there, but they're not going to be complaining about it in the same way that players that are unhappy about it would be. So it's definitely a tricky one, and it's definitely one of the more, I guess, on the nose egregious version of those kinds of things in EVE. I still cannot, it feels too fixable. Like when you start going down the road of like, oh, CCP and dark patterns and trying to take people's money, this goes back to like things like whenever CCP introduces new skills or new ships and people are like, oh, well, CCP is just trying to force people to buy skill injectors. Like, I don't know, man. I think that they're building a game and they're trying to make the best game and most successful game that they can. I would not consider that a dark pattern personally. I'll just put it that way. I've certainly had way more nefarious shop stuff in games, yeah. Also, like, you do continually get little amounts of free plex all the time. So, whatever. Maybe after the MP that was designed at the same quality, sure, but it's the only cutscene in the game with NPCs interacting to give you a first hit of MTX. I mean, that's part of the broader issue that the NPE in EVE, because of how much design and work has gone into it, does not set people up for actual expectation of what the real game looks like, right? The better example of that was the Inception NPE, which was totally voiced and was this big, long event. And this happens all the time. Like when they try to make the NPE or the beginning sections to be like more robust, then people get through it and then they have this expectation that this is the game that they're playing, but it's definitely not, right? Like if you got that and you're like, oh my God, there's going to be like NPC interactions, this is so cool, and then it never happens again, that's its own disappointment. But I personally would rather argue that this should be the beginning of more of that kind of thing. Not necessarily dark patterns of trying to convince you to buy Plex, but I mean like NPCs interacting with each other, Aura interacting with things going on. You know, I would rather see more of that than like attack the one thing that does exist. I love it when the game is interrupting my activity and is pushing me to discover all the new features of the market. Need more interruptions, please. Oh boy. Look. Well, I mean, people can ignore it, therefore it's not truly interactive or interruptive. Would love more content in EVE Online like the voice lines in the MPE. Yeah, I agree, Jeff. And that's the thing, is like it's a hard situation. We got to pull apart the pieces of this. I want every time you pull a mission, Aura can start telling you about the mission while you're flying. I actually like the idea that this can be a thing that doesn't interrupt your gameplay. Yeah, how else is the game supposed to convey information to the player, though? Exactly. Like, well, and to be honest, there's a lot of EVE players that believe that CCP shouldn't be teaching the game because players teach the game, and I've argued vehemently about that my entire EVE career. You know, EVE should be a game that's learnable through play. And I think that Aura, as an LLM, would be a huge step in that direction. If it's done right. We're going back to Frontiers now,
and we're gonna, we're putting things out there as quickly as we get them to the point where that we know they're not.
And as soon as we have something more concrete, we will have it on our stream to discuss it, also to get the feedback.
I'll talk about this in more detail. So I think probably next month we'll be able to get a CCP machine in and talk about it.
Cool.
Shall we move on?
Yep, we did some industry stuff as well. We've been doing some industry stuff.
Yep. Updates to industry.
Yeah, Jeff points out that they did add the voice lines as you're moving, and that is so great. That's one of the ideas of like why I want Aura to talk to you as you're getting ready for a mission. We didn't go back to Frontiers, damn it. But like as you're traveling to the mission, Aura can talk to you about it. That would be cool.
You want to talk about this one, CCP?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this is stuff that you've already seen. This is actually taking.
Well, let's back up a little bit.
we will get there. It's coming piece by piece, and we're gonna, we're putting things out there as quickly as we get them to the point where that we know they're not.
And as soon as we have something more concrete, we will have it on our stream to discuss it, also to get feedback.
I'm going to talk about this in more detail, so I think probably next month we'll be able to get a CCP machine in and talk about it.
Cool.
Right, shall we move on?
Yeah, we did some industry stuff as well. We've been doing some industry stuff.
Yep. Updates to industry. You want to talk about this one, CCP Jotun?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this is stuff that you've already seen. This is actually taken straight from the game right now. What we're doing right now is trying to, put together a proof of concept, right, of what industry should look like into the future. We've addressed a lot of concerns people have had. One of the biggest concerns that we got a lot of feedback on, and we were able to put it in, and you can kind of see it here, is a visual indicator of how full those portable storages are on a moment-to-moment basis. So you can see basically a line of how full a storage is when you're trying to decide an input and an output. All of this, I mean, we've gone on at length in the past about how the industry system should feel at this stage like you are doing everything with your hands, because you are doing everything with your hands. This is very
Man, the industry UI in eFrontiers is by far my most annoying thing about, like, I have gotten so frustrated at all of the little, like, quirks and frustrations built into the original UI for and really the gameplay loop of industry in eFrontiers. This looks so much better. Boy.
Industrial revolution in a very broad sense. Yep. So this is not anything new. This is stuff you've already seen. I just want to get some video of it because I think it's pretty cool. Yep.
I agree with Malak. I want more dynamic content in the universe that reflects the interesting pieces of those universe of the different areas of space.
I like the work that we've done. There is more cool stuff coming from this, but this is, again, very much the kind of proof of concept for bigger things happening in the future.
Yep. And as I need to check my eyesight soon. Kjab, ex-Kjaba. Is saying we're taking a step in the right direction, and like we did a release in early December.
What Carl said, I like CCP Bowman. He seemed very wise, like the dad of the team. Spot on.
More like the grandfather. But
No,
yeah, exactly.
You actually could be my
probably.
Yeah.
And has a tremendous amount of experience in the industry.
Oh yeah,
so he's seen it all.
You came from
multiple companies.
Yeah, a lot of different places. You were at Bungie for a while.
Yeah, I was back when Bungie was new.
Yeah, and then you worked at Bungie in the 90s, like OG Bungie. Do you want to wow the people with a little rundown of some of the cool things you worked on?
I worked
Frontier.
on Dungeons & Dragons Online, Lord of the Rings Online.
Okay.
Asher's Call 1 and 2. We did left.
All right. I love Asheron's Call. Asheron's Call is so good.
For Dead at One Studio, we worked with
one, not
that
two.
team that built that with Turtle Rock.
Yep.
We worked on back ends of multiple shooters that you've played.
Cool.
We're gaming team.
Yeah.
More like not CCP Boom, more CCP Dadman though.
Baby Dadman. Hell yeah.
That's an original.
CCP John Halo. That's very good. All right, continue on.
All right, world creation. So this is all the sort of things about the flavor of the universe. So NPCs have got a pretty substantial update to the way they work.
Yep.
They're no longer just like, I'm an NPC, I shoot players. Now they have their own internal logic that kind of makes sense, and it depends on the brain of the NPC itself. We talked at length last week with CCP Dramaturg on this. Some of the big ones, for example, like the Moon Eater and Zerote, they're kind of like a bear.
Wait. Hold on. Wait. He just said something that got my attention. Has nothing. Hold on. eFrontiers. Last week? When did they talk last week? What happened? Wait. Was there a thing last week? Oh, wait. Hold on. This just completely derailed
Good
me.
afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to yet another.
So this is a week ago.
For like an Arabic speak in it. And I'm excited to get joining you today here from lovely sunny, for the first time in a week, Reykjavik, Iceland. Joining you alongside my very good friend, my colleague, my confidant, CCP Dramaturge.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, this is it. We got it. We got him back. Here they are. Hello, CCP Dramaturge. It's me.
Wait.
And you're you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm having a moment of madness, guys. Help me out here for a second. CCP Dramaturge is that Uriel? Isn't that hold on. I'm having I'm having a moment. You guys are going to just have to put up with me for a second. CCP Dramaturge. Is that Uriel? When Uriel joined Eve, hold on. Eve Online Uriel with a U. When Uriel joined CCP, oh my God, yes, wait. Previously CCP Dramaturge. Wait, what? Hold on. So Uriel is like one of the main lore guys in EVE Online. And I mean like my side of the fence, right? He was the guy when it came to like drifters and Triglavians. In fact, if I go to the like EVE forums, Triglavian, and I pull that up, I go to any comment. Oh wait, no, that one's not going to work. Here we go. Any of the ones with the word compilation in it, we see Uriel, name I can't pronounce, right? This guy was huge in paying attention to the Triglavians and sleeper stuff. And then eventually he got hired. He was kind of nicknamed Dreamy Lore Guy because he had this long hair. Let's see. And here on his X, it says narrative designer for EVE and sci-fi karaoke and jury, so-called Dreamy Lore Guy, previously CCP Demiurge. That's not... They didn't... Am I having a crazy moment? Dramaturge. Demiurge and Dramaturge are two different names. Okay, sorry, I had a moment. Let's carry on. Dramaturge is an interesting word, by the way, because dramaturge is like I was actually a dramaturge in theater for a while. Basically, when you're in theater, the dramaturge is the person that is designed to, like, their job is to make sure that everything is period accurate or accurate internally when it comes to the story. So sorry, I had a moment. Dramaturge and Demiurge, two different names, two different things. Let's keep going. I'm sorry.
You're in the forest.
Yeah.
It's not coming to just, fuck up anyone that wanders by. But if you go to sleep and you leave, your sausages in the cooler inside your tent, you're gonna wake up with a bear just kind of poking its head through. And when a bear just pushes you out of the way, you probably get killed because they're so much stronger and bigger than you. And it's the same idea. They have their own things that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
He also said about a shark tests things by biting it. But of course, if you're a human and you get bitten by a shark, it's usually not very good. Usually not very good.
Never leave your sausages out. Hey, Apex, that's wise words there, bud.
Yeah.
Gotta keep your sausages.
Always keep them stored.
Yeah, store your sausages.
All right, we should move on a little bit further. So this is landscapes. You recorded this video for me last night, I believe.
Did, yes. We got this video last night from the newest version of some of the landscape stuff that the CCP is putting together, among others. This is a cool set of there's a bunch of new structures in here, a bunch of new setups for how those structures can be put together. This is one of probably a dozen new different landscape structures that were or landscape entry points that I've gone to in the system that I was in last night. I just picked the one that I thought was kind of the hottest, and it is very, very cool. These things are huge. You don't really get a good sense of scale from this video. Take my word for it. In future videos, there will be more.
And imagine also in the future when you come into a place like this, you don't have the icons on the screen.
Yep.
You need to be scanning it down, and you really don't know what is around you. And the more you try to scan, more likely you are to be caught.
Somebody's hiding behind it, right?
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
So that's what we want.
Exactly.
Right.
And what to explain also what this landscapes does is that yes, Monkey landscapes will be in all of Frontier, not just the starting areas. So
landscapes are like these big, sprawling, dynamic sites that exist in the game that they've been trying. This is like the direction that they're doing content in the future. That goes back to like the scanning of the solar systems and all that sort of stuff, just so people know. I do like that they're on board with the Lego thing. Hopefully they can make it performant. You can make it performant if you do it well.
We took it from 0 to 1 in December to try it out, had it in the starting areas, spot on there, and now we're taking it to all the world.
The rest of the universe.
The content that is in the world now is not, in the first iteration, not changing drastically, but we're using the stuff that we have and making it bigger, cooler, etc.
Somebody says, do we care? Wrong urge. Yeah, so the reason why it matters is because keeping track of which developers are there and which developers aren't there and who's working on what is something that like I have to keep track of. So I do apologize for that. Aside, it would have mattered if I had figured it out, if it had been true.
Like Jotun is showing here.
Another example of great piloting by CCP Jotun there.
It was like 8 o'clock at night. Give me a break.
Yeah, but like, when he has a joystick, it'll be way better.
It's way better.
Way better. You know? But what it will do is that then when we have it in the whole world, doing different types of content, where it is also just even it's similar, it is different in all over the world. It will make a massive difference for you as you fly around Frontier and try to discover
a lot more to explore. That is the goal. We're building the tool set right now. So what you're seeing are experiments to learn how to do what we want to do, and then we're building tools to do it at scale.
It's not quite the same thing, Lazy One, because it's more like an anomaly that has dynamic components to it, right? Things actually happen within it. The rogue drones build things up or whatever. So, yeah, they talked about landscapes more in a different video. We looked at it, but to me, it's still a little bit too new for the realities of it to be like pinned down.
Yep, and that's the hard thing is at scale. This is one I dropped in this morning. This is an update to volumetric.
We actually even played around with one of the landscapes in there during the last playtest that we did.
Cloud, so we can. I know this is somewhat ironic because someone was asking, "Where will we see more of the stars?" Not in this particular video, that's for sure. But this is. We can pick and choose where we want these things all to be. As landscapes get bigger, some of them might be very densely populated with these sort of volumetric space clouds. Some of them might be just completely open, where you can see thousands of kilometers. But you know, sometimes you just want like a spooky dark thing like this where, you know, there could be someone else in the fog just ahead of you. And you can imagine if you swing your headlight, by the way, headlights are coming, around, you might be able to highlight different things in the fog.
And I imagine here, this, like, without the UI, is much more closer to the experience that we want to deliver. And then you need to scan it down to find pings and interact with them. Like, you are going to get...
Well, they just said they're putting in headlights, and there was more color in the ships that were skinned. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing is untextured in Eve, or in Eve Frontier, so that's a big part of it, too. Spooky dark is cool, but it gets old. Yeah, it's bad if it's everywhere. But this looks like a cool site.
Get fucked over.
Shout out to CCP. New guy.
He's been new guy.
Shout out. Who was doing a lot of work in those clouds the other day and posted that. Made it available for everybody. It's very, very cool stuff. Continuing on.
Identity. So,
that said, this game does, even the textured stuff, they are a big fan of gray. They are a big fan of gray.
Your characters are no longer going to be just JPEGs. They're going to be full animated 3D characters, bringing us one step closer to having the characters fully within the game themselves. This is an example of one of the tribal packs and how it will look.
And Series Pro, sorry, just if you need to go inside buildings, yes, period. Imagine WASD controls inside.
Yeah. Again, layers, these are the goals, this is where we're going. What we want to share with you is what we want to build over time.
And the vision trailer, if you go look at the vision trailer from last year, and if you compare it to what we're showing now, you will see that there's a clear progress being...
lotion, yes, lotion.
We need to provide that for our... It's so funny because you can look up there and see the little icon for the shell. It's so smooth and glossy. But then you look over the man himself and he's just so crispy.
Because he's a tribal character.
Yes,
so
of course.
He's more raw. And of course, that doesn't stop there. So continuing with further visualizations on bringing this in. So it really should be very digested to the game, the world, Frontier. The idea of like the shells that you have are just these bodies that you're occupying. That do they have their own consciousness before you, some sort of like invasive mind virus, take over? Get to the point where you have built up skills within this shell, and you can't get them any further. So you have to sacrifice the shell into the void in some way, and then you can, occupy a new one. What's happening to that shell? Who was that shell? Did that shell have a consciousness? Etc.
Did it have a soul?
Exactly. So
what is life?
What is life?
And we also, I think it's important that we're going to stop using the word clone because that implies an organic.
Yes,
shell.
That's why I'm saying shell.
And so we want to let you know that there will be both organic and mechanical and other. We'll leave it at that.
Other
coming.
What's cool about this too is that there's this distinction between the body that you live in and the thing you idealize yourself as, right? CCP Maximum Cat talks about this a lot and we've this is not anything new that we've kind of talked about kind of piece by piece over the last couple months. Yourself is the identity. This is your intelligence and consciousness. This is you, right? The shell is just the body that you inhabit. So what the body that you inhabit looks like and what your self identifies itself as are two very different things.
Yes.
And you will be able to have more than one.
Yeah.
And you will be able to modify them through gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. And
I guess my question is just why have a shell at all? Why not just be a informational matrix that resides within the ship itself? Why have a physical body that's shaped like a person separate from the ship?
to CCP Bowman's point, and Econ Martin were like, will shells be modular? Can I swap my arm to a different skin, etc.? Like as Bowman was talking about, it's both mechanical and organic. You can just imagine in the future the gooey, nasty, organic farming you'll need to do to achieve some clones. Because right now, so the current version right now is that there's like some kind of gimpish shell that just comes with the ship. But in the future, there's whole sorts of
Man, if EVE Frontiers gets walking in stations and EVE Online does not, people are going to lose their goddamn mind. The third is a box of seashells. He doesn't even know how to use the seashells.
History around creating different types of shells to a point in the future where it is also about like different assembling of the
I'm expecting different players to be able to offer different shells to other players.
You might be able to like grow and build some pretty effective mining shells that other people want to be able to purchase, transport to where they are using, and then use those shells for different mining operations.
Good well as GIMP shells will be like a sought after.
Blurpsec asks a really good question actually, where he says, are we synthetic individuals or are we reincarnations of previous digital consciousnesses iced by the keeper upon our previous death? And the answer is, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
No, we have some answers.
No, we definitely have answers.
I think we want to roll them out over time.
Yes, indeed.
But that kind of speculation is exactly what we want.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
I honestly would not be surprised if in the end EVE Frontiers doesn't really rely on a monthly sub, because the whole point of it is actually to tie any in-game action to an amount of fuel that's required, which is requires money to be able to mine more fuel. So they may actually not have, if they do have a premium like subscription, it's more likely to be like, here's a whole bunch of free crystals. This actually does feel a lot more like, not necessarily rigging, but it does feel a little bit like implants, right? Like in the fact that you can have a specialty shell that augments your ships in a specific way, like your attributes or whatever. So, I get 10% additional mining speed when I'm using this shell over a different shell. That's what it feels like that they're kind of tapping into, and then you have to construct different shells and you can hop between them. I think that this is basically mechanically replacing implants.
You can have
Mind Garden for the attributes section sounds familiar. Where is that? What was that? Where was that? Where's the Mind Garden statement? Did they say it out loud? I don't know.
That kind of speculation is exactly what we want.
Yeah, no doubt.
So you can have some
spooked.
You can start to like get more creative with, because we have the bodies in the client now, and the 3D visualization and so on, and they're fully interactive, like live, not just like render.
You seem to want to perform a direct scan. The service is currently offline, and your subscription to the service is expired. Well, again, so like the idea of a subscription actually kind of goes against. Oh, at the top of the bonuses list. Mind Garden. I see it. It's right there. Interesting. So I don't think, like, part of the goal would be to not have a subscription because they want it to be decentralized. Who would you have a subscription to? That's why they're doing it the way they're doing it. In theory. That's the pipe dream.
You can have some spooked. You can start to like get more creative with, because we have the bodies in the client now, and the 3D visualization and so on, and they're fully interactive, like live, not just like renders that are stationary. We can start add in a lot more customization a lot easier, and you can make your characters or your shells, I should say, look pretty #poggers, as the kids are saying.
Yeah, we're gonna do something with this image because this is it feels, especially some of the ones like the top right, and like there's some really cool things that we can do with this.
That's good to laugh.
Econ Martin, go fuck yourself. God damn it! Don't laugh. Don't encourage it.
I do really like the idea of clone skins. This looks cool.
Funny,
He makes it work.
I was laughing at another thing.
Unrelated.
Yeah, of course, unrelated.
Another good joke there.
Carry on. Oh yeah, I love this too.
I'm happy about this.
Yeah, and then you start to get into like deep customization. So it was asked earlier on, like, can they be different like arms and stuff?
Mhm.
We're not just going to stop there with the kind of customization level, and it's all going to be relevant to gameplay and so on as well. So the example we use, I think years ago now, is like if you spend a lot of time in crewed rifts, then perhaps the effect of that is going to start to like affect the shell in some way or another. Like if you in your human body went and worked in a nuclear reactor with no protection for a long time,
right?
you're not doing pretty well.
No.
But even if you just are exposed to it over time, you're going to start to do things, and you can think of this as sort of analogous to the Fremen in Dune. They interact with the spice loss. They get the blue eyes. So that's kind of a really good way to think about it. So
and this is an almost to.
I do like the idea of like the rifters, the guys who like mine rifts end up looking visibly different because they're being affected by the stuff that's being exposed to. That's a cool idea for an MMO like environment where like your actual activity, it's not just you get to customize how you look, but what you do in the game customizes how you look in a way that you can't necessarily control. That's cool. That would be very cool.
One of the best FPS games in history, Doom. As well. Like it is just too cool not to do. But I think also what's worth calling out
the
here
spice must
is
flow.
that we released V1 of character progression in December, and then if you go back, like what means having a system in, as like with landscapes and then character progression, is that it just becomes so easy to add to it once you have the foundation in place. So more different types of activities for you to do to gain memory, more.
Yeah, I always wanted a good versus evil system in a fantasy MMO, kind of like Fable, where your character becomes more good or evil looking based on your PK activity. I mean, like, you could argue that Star Wars kind of plays into that with the whole like dark side effect, but that doesn't play into your social behavior, right? That's just like the choices that you made during the story. I do love the idea that like it reminds me of like Vampire the Masquerade or the Requiem, where it's like you can cause diablerie, you can perform diablerie, you can devour another vampire to gain his power, but it like taints your soul in a way that other vampires can see on you. But yeah, like the idea that the more it even kind of exists in Eve to a certain extent, not actually like impact, but you know, there was, especially when like the modeling, the new player system was put in back in like 2011 or whatever. You know, it's true that one of the things that CCP noticed or pointed out was that players that are really into PvP often tended to have incredibly alien looking characters. They were the ones that like really took their body modification customization to the most extreme and made them look inhuman. But that was a choice by the players. It would be cool if like the more you do stuff, maybe the more gaunt you become or the more pale you become or whatever. But on the other hand, like a lot of players will just not like that because they don't want that customization. Like they want to be able to choose how they look, not have their actions choose what they look. You know, that's definitely like there would be pushback if they ever did that, right? In the same way that like Star Wars, you can just turn off the dark side appearance. So, I mean, it would be a tricky one for them to do because like, do you force people to commit to that? I'm sorry, you do have blue eyes now. You don't get to choose that. Like that's the problem with like the design of such things versus the reality of maintaining an MMO with players that you want to keep happy, right? That's it's a tricky one. But again, like that's kind of one of the cool things about Eve Frontiers, right? Is that like well, if you want the game that kind of cares about what you think about it, then Eve Online is a little bit more like that. Eve Frontiers is designed to be like a space colony simulator. So they may just be able to be like, well, this is what what you do affects how you look. Congratulations, get used to it. And there won't be like, you either play it and are used to it or you don't. Like if they made that change in EVE right now, they would have to answer to all of the people that were upset by that change. In this game, they could just be like, guess what? This is what the world looks like now. This is what the world works like now. And people will either deal with it or they won't. I would make it something that players have to consider, like wearing a hood to hide their gaunt, decrepit, worm-tongued looking guy. It would be so cool. It would be so cool. I just don't know whether or not that's the kind of thing that would actually even play out in MMO space at the moment. Take your meds to get rid of the space aids. Now we're getting back into Endfield. You know, just take your medication, and Originium or Arigapathy is fine.
Different options for you to progress the self and the visualization of it and everything. And this is just now like a tree that will keep on on growing because we have it in now.
Doing one cool render clone shell visualization thing takes a certain amount of time.
Charge Plex to reverse the effects. Okay, guys. Yeah, that would go over well.
Building a system that allows them to be done more customized more rapidly takes a lot longer, but once it's up and running, the individual cost becomes a lot lower in terms of time and development.
You have excellent, really inspired stuff. We'll create my Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, good out. Good.
I do love that idea too, and that's something that CCP or EVE Online doesn't factor in enough, where it's like developing the template is hard. Building extra copies once that template is made is easy. The place where this actually falls apart the most, that should work out well, is actually in Skinner, right? The development of the custom skin should be the hard, expensive part. But once it's been done, you can print out multiple copies of them very, very easily. It's actually the opposite in Skinner, where the development of the actual skin itself is relatively easy, but every additional copy made of that skin has maximum cost. You can't batch it in order to reduce the cost per unit. The only thing you can do is wait till it's like CCP puts out a discount on Skinner designs. I think this is why I said, like, originally before Skinner even came out, what they should have done is they should have made it so it's like, okay, well, you can make a custom skin and then it costs something ridiculous, like $50 worth of Plex, you know? But what you get is effectively a BPO of that skin. And then you can print that BPO out as much as you want and sell it to people or give it away to people or whatever. So there's this huge initial cost to like lock in that skin. But then once you have it, and you are the producer of that skin. And the cost to produce multiple copies of it is significantly lower than that upfront cost of developing the skin look. That would really only work if they were volatile? Absolutely not. No. Because, like, think about it. Like, right now, I make a skin, and I want it for myself. So I'm going to put in the effort to make it for myself, and then I print out my one, and now I have it for myself. That doesn't, that doesn't enable skindustrialists in the same sort of way. Because like I said, there should be something big about the actual commitment to building the design itself. That should be the big commitment. And then individual instances, I now as a player get to control how many copies of that skin I produce, how I distribute it. I could just give it away to all of my corp members if I wanted to, et cetera, et cetera. People want exclusivity, easy multiplication would kill that. But that's the way it is right now. Because if I create a skin design that I like and somebody else sees it, they can just copy it if they wanted to. If the development of the root of the skin was the expensive part, then it would be expensive to copy my design. It's easy for me to make extra copies of my design because I've already paid the cost to make it into a design. But if somebody else wants to make copies of my design, they have to pay that upfront cost. It would make it harder for somebody to just steal a design because they can't just like print up whatever they like. When I go to buy, what happens is people go on the Skinner market, they see a skin that they like, and then they go into Skinner and they just build it themselves because they only want one copy. So they just build themselves their copy and steal it and then go off with it, right? They've tried to fix that by making the components of Skinner to be kind of rare or, you know, different things like that. But if the actual like final product was like a doodad that you could use to print out multiple skins, then in order for somebody to copy it, they would have to develop their own doodad, which would have their own cost. Then the conclusion is that both the making and multiplication would be very difficult and expensive. Well, again, like I said, I want the duplication to be relatively easy, because if I want to mass produce it and give it to all my corporation, I should be able to do that. But if it costs $50 to copy my skin, then you're more likely to try to convince me to give you one of my copies because it doesn't cost me $50 to make multiple copies of it. You see what I'm saying?
Look forward to seeing it.
Yep.
And then, CCP Goodfellow, you told me you were giga hype about this and wanted to talk about it.
So I'm giga hyped about the future. The missions system as it stands now is not good. I think that is just worth calling out, and we all agree on it.
Yep.
The good news is that it has a lot of potential, and we are going to do a big push to make it a way better experience for March.
This is on their website. You get rewards and stuff for progressing within the various runs. This is what, like, this goes back to what we were talking about the other day when we were talking about PAX Dei and all that sort of stuff. The problem with these kinds of sandbox games, it's like, well, what are you doing all this for? I could mine in Eve Frontiers for 6 hours, but I know that all of my progress is going to be wiped out in 2 months. If in a progression game, in a sandbox game, you really want your like, the reason why I'm mining extra time today in Eve is because I want to have those resources in some time in the future. So like, sandboxes rely on you believing in the future of that sandbox for you to truly commit the work that it takes to progress. Same with things like PAX Dei, right? The juice has to be worth the squeeze. There has to be a reason why you want to work so hard to develop your influence within the sandbox. So, you know, Eve Frontiers, still in testing, is trying to create some sort of reason for somebody to play in a beta. And so they've created this mission system where you do things and you accumulate points in this cycle, and that becomes like a meta progression between the cycles. So that's what they're talking about right now, just so you guys know.
You good fellow, you told me you were giga hype about this and wanted to talk about it.
So I'm giga hyped about the future. The missions system as it stands now is not good. I think that is just worth calling out, and we all agree on it.
Yep.
The good news is that it has a lot of potential, and we are going to do a big push to make it a way better experience for March. Starts with a backend system to make it more easier to update and work on, and then putting some of our great colleagues to really focus on it. Because I'm a hardcore gamer myself. I like doing missions in games. I like collecting achievements and badges and bragging. It helps also with guidance in a super open world game. What should I put my thing on? But the experience now is not fun to engage with. It just isn't. But what I can though genuinely say is that the Grace is worth pursuing right now, even though the experience is bad. The Grace is worth pursuing.
Yes.
Grace turns into Eve points. I cannot understand it enough. Eve points are
worth having.
Worth having for the future.
You
Eve
will
points
want
are
them.
worth having
You
for the
will
future.
want
And
Eve points are worth having for the
Grace
please.
alone.
They are worth having.
Yeah. Grace alone, if you put the thing back up for 1 second.
Yep.
So Grace alone, in the not too distant future, is going to be related to some of these things.
Oh, okay. So very cool. I didn't know we were revealing that.
Good shot. Even though we have not put enough focus to make this experience be good, we are still standing firm on the importance of Eve points for the future.
Yeah. Mark also moving. I'm going to rush us through because we have 4 minutes, and we're almost done though. But I'm going to rush us through now.
Nailed it.
So in March, we're also moving from our partners Lattice on Redstone chain, which is EVM compatible, over to Sui, our new partners moving forward. This has been a big technical lift for the team. I asked why they can't just go right-click, go to the chain one, and unselect EVM and click Sui, but they told me that's not how it works.
It's like when you have a JPEG, you want to convert to a PNG.
Exactly.
Just like
Yeah.
You have to go .sui.
They just didn't think of it.
I know. CSP went to me and says, going, why didn't we think of that? But so that's a huge technical lift. A lot of the development of some of the smart things within the game, the smart storage unit, smart turret.
Yeah, I suspect that Eve points might become Eve coin at some point, maybe, but it sounds like they're talking about it basically being like Evermarks, right? Because they're talking about like character customizations, at least the Grace side of things. Sui is that blockchain, or like they're talking about the blockchain. They're changing from their original system, which was always going to be like a stand-in system, and I think this is supposed to be their long-term solution.
And so on, have been basically on hold until this is complete because we have to bring up the feature parity. So when we swap it over in March, it's working, and then we can start moving forward again. And the cool thing is the rest of the game has been continuing. So a bunch of the things like the base building stuff is ready to be smartified, as it were, within the next couple of months.
And just worth calling out, the Suite team itself are amazing.
So good.
And
very supportive.
And we are open sourcing everything, and we've already seen builders starting to poke at it. And this game, the likelihood of just people enjoying Frontier is multiplied by so much if we have cool builders around doing cool stuff. So shout out to builders, shout out to the Suite team. It is a bit of a change, as Blue Bresse is mentioning, like a different programming language. It is a change, but it is a change for good.
It's a lot easier because Sui's also object-oriented, unlike EVM, which is a massive thing when it comes to games.
It helps our future. Yes, that's what it does.
So,
that's really good.
We are trying to make it as easy as possible to be a hacker. AI vibe code, shout out, etc.
So this is the next big thing we've got going on. We've got a not really mid at this point, but mid-ish cycle update in content. Coming
bug fixes, quality of life.
A lot of that kind of stuff. Some new content rolling out wider across the frontier. Most of this is focused around quality of life, bug fixes, and things like that. And then the next big cycle one, which is Sui, and a lot of new content as well, including some of the stuff you've seen today, will be coming in March. I'm not sure why CCP Yikes didn't put the actual day in March.
CCP Yikes, so irresponsible.
Who's Yikes again?
That'd be John. Yeah, CCP John. John Yikes is actually his full name. Yeah. His full Christian name is Jonathan J. Yikes.
From Yorkshire.
from North Whimsyshire.
All right, take it back to fucking space camp, whoever it was.
Is this your last slide, by the way?
I think so.
Okay, thank God. Okay, shout out to CCP Armageddon, who did point out that there's a lot of really cool base building grid upgrades coming. Upgrades coming. We just don't have some stuff in here for soon, but we will. A lot of the stuff that you saw today is like sooner rather than later. Like March sooner rather than later.
It's a big month ahead of the development team now to get this all stuff in. They've been working hard. We had a kickoff 2 weeks ago where we went over all of this, so they're all hard at work delivering this. This is screenshots from the team. This is not good fella making some crazy promises that are not
a little bit. They're half crazy.
Half crazy. But obviously we'll be doing some more streams in the next couple of weeks talking about these things in more granular detail with the individual teams as we can claw them away from their producers to get them in here and have them working on stuff, because it's very, very cool to do this. But we are actually right out of time. This is the longest thing we've ever gone on one of these things. So we're going to...
Deadline.
No.
Did they get more investment funding? Seems like they were kind of running low last year. I have no idea why you would think they were running low last year. I mean, they got $50 million worth of investments. I haven't heard anything about them needing more money or anything like that about it. They are getting quite a bit of revenue from the game itself at this point too. But I haven't heard anything about them needing more investment. This is basically the end of this video. I do want to point out. So back to Eve a little bit. So we've got based on a stream that talked about CCP's financials. I might need to look into that. So we have we have the update in a little over a week, and then we have the March thing. So when these things come out, we will poke at them to at least keep an eye on Frontiers off the side, because there are a lot of interesting things and possible implications for EVE Online. That said, I want to point out that we are now in February, right? So May is FanFest. So chances are the next expansion is sometime either May, June, July, probably, right? Thereabouts. Which means that the Catalyst major update my expectation is we will start hearing about the Catalyst major update in the next week or two. I think that the Catalyst major update should come in February at some point. Hold on, let me double check this real quick. We had the Revenant major update, right? Revenant major update Eve. The Revenant major Revenant major update was in March. So we may have one more month before we get the major update, but we are getting pretty close to learning new things coming to EVE Online as well. So what are our expectations for the Catalyst major update? That's the problem is that unlike the Revenant one, they haven't really given us that much information. I guess all I can say is anytime anybody is telling what is our update, what is our expectations for the new thing that CCP is doing with EVE Online, there are 3 cornerstones. One is bastions, which is not going to be relevant to the major update, and the other two is carriers and wormholes. What those mean, I don't know, but carriers and wormholes, those are the two things that we know are like big deals when it comes to Revenant major update. If you want more information, we have done the video where we went over like CCP Akami's tea time. We will need more, and like I can't remember 100% everything that was talked about there, but that is where that kind of information would be teased out of. And I'm pretty sure that the carrier and wormhole thing is basically the conclusion from there. So, but of course we will be covering that if there's any more Okami tea times or any other updates like that. So please make sure to subscribe to the channel and share it with a friend, because this is a place where we learn about EVE Online, because we believe that a more informed, more literate player base means a better EVE Online, and that's what all of this is about. So that being said, thank you guys for checking this out. I don't know if we have anything else really to cover today. Yeah. I mean, there's probably more stuff involving mining too, but like, I'll put it this way, Jeff. If he's talking to people about mining right now, unless they are balance issues, like database number changes that can be made and that's it, then you will not see the impact on them for at least 3 months, right? Like the lead time from like lesson learned to implementation is usually about 3 months, and the lead time for like feature building is about 2 years. So keep that in mind. You know, even if they found something out from an event, they can't do stuff for the next event. They have to do it for the event after, just because of the way that design works. So, yeah. That said, though, I mean, like, a lot of that like major update stuff is just balance changes. So it could very well be stuff that gets like adjusted during the major update. So I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying if it becomes a feature, if it's a thing that needs to be actually built, not just a change that needs to be done, then you can't expect it to be soon. Maybe they'll bring the mining event back for the update. The Resource Wars, that'd be cool. Well, that's the problem. Resource Wars would have to be redone at this point, because, I mean, maybe not totally, but like the changing of the speed of mining plus the introduction of crits does kind of change the calculus when it comes to Resource Wars. So I don't know if if it was implemented exactly the same as it was before, it would not be exactly the same, just because of the change in the parameters. I still think, yeah, Resource Wars is great. I've got videos of me doing it back in the day. Does it matter if it's easier? Yes and no, because like the whole idea is that so Resource Wars as it was, like, has bronze, silver, gold, and so you got different amount of value. You got different rewards based on how effectively you ran it. So having a team of people, if you maximized your team, so you had the maximum number of people that you could bring into the site, and they all knew what they were doing, you could make more money. Whereas with this, it would be like, first of all, it's easier because, so it used to be that like you would have to counter cycle or short cycle your mining laser, because there's less rocks in the rock than your mining laser mines in a full cycle, right? So you'd have to cut it at about a third. Everything past a third of your mining laser is just wasted time. So given the fact that they've cut the laser time in half, means that that wasted time has been cut in half. And then on top of that, crits make it so that you end up having extra mining material than before. And so at the very least, they might need to adjust like the cutoff points for bronze, silver, and gold. I would not want it that getting gold has less to do with doing it right and more to do with getting lucky with crits. You get what I'm saying? That's the reason why I think it's like, ooh, I want it to work, but it may need a little bit of extra tweaking to make it fully work. But maybe it's fine. Maybe it's fine. Just roll it out, see how it works. I don't know. I'd rather have it and have it not be quite the same than not have it at all. I will say that. But we're at the 3-hour point, so I don't think jumping into faction warfare right now is necessarily like just starting a whole nother thing. So I think that we're going to wrap things up right now. We have been on the second channel on the Eve Decanted channel, I was playing some of the Arknight Enfield game. I might play some more of that tonight. People are interested in that. Oh my god, it's such a good game. So keep an eye on the Discord in the event that I do that. No promises tonight. I don't know. I think I'm going to be. Something tells me that today I've got real life stuff and editing to do. But later this week, Tuesday, tomorrow, we should have more to cover and faction warfare stuff. But like I said, make sure that you are on the Discord and subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest news, both in EVE Online and for the stream. You can join the Discord even if you're not in the Convocation of Empyreans, but the Convocation of Empyreans is recruiting in EVE. We are here to maximize player engagement with EVE Online. We need more miners. Just so you know, we mine every Sunday. You come mine my moon. Whatever. Like the stream for the guinea pigs and for the puppy. If you're new to EVE, or if you've never used the buddy code for 1 million free skill points, make sure to use the buddy code down below or in chat. It goes to one of the people that helps make the stream and the convocation possible. I really, really appreciate it. Do we have anything else to talk about? The last stream was pretty good. I will be editing that out to get like the top 10 tips for EVE Online. But I feel like the discussion on the last few streams have been really worthwhile. I know there's a lot of you who think like, okay, well, the live streams, like if I miss a live stream, trust me, I try to make my live streams as timely or as timeless as possible. So it's worth going back through the back catalog and checking those out. But I think that might be it. So with all that said, I will go look for my dog after this, so hang tight, don't just quit. But I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put EVE into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, spending time with us, discussing such things. I know that some people might be like, oh, EVE Frontiers, why are you even covering that? But I hope that all of you can see that, like, by discussing EVE Frontiers, we get a lot of other interesting stuff to talk about, and that is largely because you guys and your contributions to my streams, which is why I like doing these live streams instead of just recording a video and putting it out there. So thank you all for participating. Thank you all for liking the stream. That's a big deal. And sharing it with friends. That's a huge deal. Yeah. So all that said, I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. I want to give an extra special thank you to all of my top tier supporters, especially 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, Grims, May, Malak Starfire, Malin, Mercutan, Mayak, Michael, Nihilim, LM1, Sheesh, Susuro, Thrans, and Rid. Thank you all so much. Aura, upvote the stream. I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine.
I'm gonna go get my puppy, so probably, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna go get my puppy. I'm sorry, guys. She's super not into it right now. But more pics to come on my supporter channel.
Bring on the wrecking machine. Setting your dreams
And the second channel.
on fire. Bring on the wrecking machine. Bring on the wrecking machine. Bring on the wrecking machine. Gonna ignite your every desire. Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city you burn. every city